Welcome to the Easton School Committee meeting of February 11th, 2021. This is a Zoom meeting, still in state of emergency. You can ask questions through the question and answer. Please put your name and address in that. Before you write your question, put your name and address in there, please. And we will be doing our Zoom meeting. Okay. And next up is the regular minutes of January 14th, 2021. Are there any comments, questions, or corrections? Nothing. Jen is going to be a little bit late. She'll be here. She's going to be a little bit late. And I think she said she was fine with the minutes. All right. Do I have a motion to accept the school committee meeting minutes of Thursday, January 14th?
Wiseman, so moved.
And I need a second. Thank you. All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Okay, thank you. And next up are the school committee meeting minutes of Thursday, January 28th, 2021. Any comments, questions, or corrections? Go ahead, Caroline.
Just for clarification purposes on the assistant superintendent notes, the first paragraph about time on learning, I know I just have some small sort of clarifying changes that I think might be helpful. First of all, I couldn't get it to add up the right way, but I guess they're counting the extra minute for all 7 classes plus the end of the day. Is that correct? Anyway, I couldn't get it to add up to the 65 minutes, but it is 65 minutes per week, right? That we're gaining.
That is correct.
Okay, because I think we should add per week, because it just says 65 minutes, almost sounds like for the year. And so I think we should add per week there, but also I just wanted a little clarification on, I know that there's the home transition time. Now, is that every day, including remote days then? The 5 extra minutes?
So what's happening is they took out transitions on Wednesdays between classes, so there are no transitions. And so
okay, so that's that 5 minutes, sort of, or no, that's that chunk of time.
Correct.
Oh, okay, so that's okay. I
but
guess
they
I'm
also,
sure
I'm sorry,
you explained it at the time. I just missed that part. Yeah.
They also shortened the transitions on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday from 5 minutes to 4 minutes.
Right, and that was the other small change I'd sort of recommend is I think we can just call it passing time. The way it's written, it's transition time for passing or something like that. But I think everyone knows what passing time is, and I think that's probably a little bit clearer explanation, at least for those who have high school students. So I just was going to recommend those 2 changes for that section of the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any comments, questions, or corrections? Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to accept the school committee meeting minutes of Thursday, January 28th, 2021?
Durant, so moved.
Wiseman.
O'Neill, okay.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Thank you. And our last set of minutes tonight are the Easton School Committee Executive Session meeting minutes, Thursday, January 28th, 2021. Are there any comments or corrections? Questions? Okay. I'm going to make a motion to accept these without release.
O'Neill. Sorry.
Caroline, second.
I'm not going to second anything today. It's okay. I'll just.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Thank you. Next, we have personnel changes, retirements. Dr. Cabral.
Thank you. We have two retirements this evening. The first is Joan Holt, who is present this evening and would like to speak once we're finished, and I'll give you the opportunity to do that, Ms. Holt. Joan is the OA librarian. She came to the Easton Public Schools in 2010 as the school librarian for Oliver Ames. She has also served as the library department chair and coordinated the efforts across the libraries in the district. She has been the 2019 freshman class advisor, and for several years has been either the advisor or co-advisor on the National Honor Society. In 2013, she was presented with her professional teaching status. She plans to retire on October 19th, upcoming October, after having 11 years in the district. And, you know, it goes without saying for those of us that work here, but perhaps not outside the district, that Joan's work as the media center specialist is well beyond maybe our recollection of our public libraries in the past, where you're just, you know, kind of taking, coming in and taking books and putting dates on cards. She has been an integral part of the high school. Most people don't know that a high school librarian must be a certified librarian, and she is, and she has just been priceless to the staff. She is always looking for resources, materials, ways to help the staff, and of course, even her work as the advisor or co-advisor for any parent that's had a student who's been part of those ceremonies of the National Honor Society know what a tremendous amount of work goes into that, and they're always very lovely and well put together. So Joan is going to be sorely missed, but of course, we're very happy for her and for this very important decision in her life. Once you have all had the opportunity to speak, if you would like, I will add her to the group so she can speak.
Okay, I'll read her letter. Dear Dr. Cabral, I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve the students, faculty, and staff at Oliver Ames these last 11 years. It is bittersweet that I submit my letter of retirement to you. October 19th, 2021 will be my last day as the library teacher at Oliver Ames High School. Easton Public School provided me with many opportunities to expand my knowledge and expertise with the educational community. Throughout my tenure at Oliver Ames, I was supported and valued as a library teacher. I was fortunate to have strong administrative support from the high school and the district. Knowing that the library and the work of the librarian is valued and essential for a strong library program. I have truly enjoyed working at Oliver Ames and for Easton Public Schools, and I will miss my coworkers and my workplace. Sincerely, Joan Holt. Okay, Joan, you've been fabulous. I have enjoyed the few times that I've gotten to be at the OA library. You're always doing something. It's tremendous what you do. So you will be missed very much. Good luck in your future endeavors. Caroline?
Well, I just wanted to sort of echo what Leisha said. I just can't imagine the changes that people who have, you know, may originally have been certified as librarians, school librarians, have had to make in their practice, and how many new initiatives they've had to undertake. And I know that Joan has been right there with all the changes and all of the new initiatives. And I certainly hope you enjoy your retirement, Joan, but thank you for all of the great service that you've given us.
Thank you very much.
Joan, if you'd like to say a few words, go right ahead.
Well, it's funny that both Caroline and Dr. Cabral mentioned, you know, the profession changing, and this will be my 43rd year of working in the field of library science. I don't tell the students how long I've been a librarian, because then they say, oh, she's really old. But, I wouldn't even tell them that the internet wasn't even invented way back when I started. So I do so appreciate the support. The letter says it all. The staff and the administration have been phenomenal. My husband and I were just talking today about, well, what was your best job? And don't tell the other places, but hands down, Easton, because of the people I've worked with and everything, you guys will all be near and dear to my heart. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Joan. You're amazing. I'm going to make a motion to accept with regret the retirement of Joan Holt.
O'Neill second.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, sadly, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes?
Wiseman, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I will leave you to your business.
But if I may jump in before,
Sure.
if I may jump in, I just to say something about Joan. I've had the honor of working with her as a curriculum leader, and she has, while she works at Oliver Ames, she really has the district in her heart, and that quality will be sorely missed. And Joan, you've just been so delightful to work with. Your passion for the libraries within the district and ensuring that they are current. And I've watched how the children interact with you as well, and the respect that you have from them. They even you haven't told them how many years you've been doing what you're doing, but it doesn't matter to them. So you will definitely be missed, and I really appreciate you as a colleague, and thank you for all of your support of my work and our work together over the past few years.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Joan. Congratulations.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, Dr. Cabral.
Okay. Our second retiree is Doreen Graff. Doreen Graff came to the Easton Public Schools in October of '86 as a school nurse for the middle school. Prior to that, she was a school nurse sub. In 1989, she was transferred to Parkview Elementary School, where she remains today. Doreen's been with the Easton Public Schools for 34 years, and she plans to retire on June 30th of this school year. Now, I know in her letter she said 33 years. The years can roll together, but we have her recorded as 34. So you can see it's a tremendous amount of time and dedicated service, and Doreen and all of our nurses have had a tremendous year this year, as you can imagine. But similarly to words that I spoke about another nurse retirement we had this year, all of our nurses play a very critical role in the overall health and welfare of our students and our staff. They get to know who the students are, they get to know their families, they're involved in wraparound services, and certainly Doreen is still very influential and involved in that. And it is going to be a very difficult role to fill. Our nurses are critical to our operations in best of times, and certainly in this environment, I know there's no question about all that they have contributed to our community. So she's going to be sorely missed. Once again, I am very happy for her, sad for us. I know the Parkview community will be very sad to move on without her, but their well wishes are with her as well. You have her letter.
Dear Dr. Cabral, this letter represents my official notice of retirement from my position of school nurse RN with the Easton Public Schools, be made final on the 30th day of June 2021. It has been with great pleasure to work alongside the individuals within the Easton Public Schools, and I will always appreciate the experience and knowledge I have gained during the past 34 years. Sincerely, Doreen Graff.
And unfortunately, she's unable to join us this evening.
Well, I just want to say that I've had a few, gatherings with Doreen. When she was at Parkview, I was at the middle school, and I was at the middle school when she was there too. But she's just a lovely, lovely girl. When you're at Parkview a little student comes in to see, she's just so welcoming and understanding and caring, as are all of everybody, you know, not just the nurses, but everyone, about how they care about our little ones. So anyway, good luck, Doreen. I know you're going to love retirement, and thank you for your service. Anyone else? Okay. I'm gonna make a motion to accept with regret the retirement of Doreen Graff. Do I have a second?
Wiseman, second.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Welcome back, Jen. How
Hi.
was the game? How was the game?
It was good. They won.
Okay, good.
Nice 4-3 over North Attleboro for JV.
Glad, I'm glad you got to go. That's great.
Thank you. Thanks for
Okay.
understanding.
The next item is the 2021-2022 schedule of school committee meetings, second reading. Are there any comments or corrections on this for anyone? Good? Okay, so do I have a motion to accept the schedule of school committee meetings 2021-2022 as printed?
Star, so moved.
And I need a second.
Nancy, I'm sorry, it's taking a second for me to pull it up. I do have a question, and I realized that I wasn't at the first reading because I joined that
Okay.
meeting late.
Yeah,
Our meetings have tended to be at 5 o'clock. Even
Yes.
though they had said 6:30 in this past year.
right.
Are we going back to 6:30 on some of these, or?
It's a good point.
Well, actually, we had asked, I didn't even think about that, Michelle, and thank you for pointing that out. I had mentioned last time that we have the asterisk, which we do now have at the bottom, that as long as the governor's emergency orders are in effect, we would be meeting remotely. So it makes sense for us, I think, to continue the 5 p.m. time, which I think everyone found more convenient, at least all the school committee members and staff and administrators. So it may make sense to also have an additional asterisk that meetings may be moved to 5 p.m. I mean, people, can't, if we're meeting remotely, we won't be able to have people come in person anyway. I know that the meetings were set at 6 or 6:30 or 7, depending, to make it easier for people who were coming home from work and could go to meetings. But, basically people can tune in from anywhere, anytime now. So I do think we should, thank you for pointing that out, Michelle. I think we should add another, we can still approve it, but with that additional sort of notation.
Okay. So the motion will stand with the new correction of a 5 o'clock start time.
For remote meetings.
If
For
for
remote
remote
meetings.
meeting, yes. Yep. I mean, it could even go in that first asterisk.
Right, that's true.
Over Zoom platform at 5 o'clock p.m. Okay,
Right, there you
thank you,
go.
Michelle. All right, is there a second?
Okay,
Wiseman,
Oh.
second.
Sorry.
couldn't remember who's who.
All those in favor? I've lost control. All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
Ruka, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Okay, thank you. Number 5 is the report of the school committee for the town report book. So this, I just want to tell you, this is still a draft. I did get some information today from Marilyn Gordon, thank you very much, and from Caroline. So I will fix up those, at least the budget paragraph and the capital budget paragraph, and I think I have a couple other things that I have to fix. I know it's not the usual annual report for the town report, but I felt like historically we needed to tell the town or show the town what was going on in 2020 with the Easton Public Schools. And that's what I was trying to convey in this report. And also that we did still have some normal things like even though they weren't normal, but the, professional status, the election, town meeting, things like that. So retirements. So just so you know, I'll fix this up and I will send you a copy. But if you like what you see, if you have anything to tell me, you want to change, please tell me right now.
Yeah, we already talked about the fact that the election was actually
Yep.
June 27th, right?
I will fix, and it's funny because I knew that and I just didn't fix it. So yeah. Anyone else? Okay,
I
so
think my only, and I apologize for not getting written comments back to you, but my only comments were going to be around the budget paragraph.
Yeah.
It looks like you got feedback on that,
Well,
so
I
I'll
did.
wait and see your revisions and then let you know if there was anything else.
And it's, the number is right, but the operating budget was 0.638% increase, not like I have written in here, 2.5, because I was just taking from the 2019 booklet. So I'm gonna fix that whole paragraph because, there was definitely a drop in funding in Title I. So I wanna make sure that gets in there. And, there's just a few
I might-
places in there.
Yeah, I might have some suggestions for that paragraph to
Great.
sort of mention some of the COVID funding that we got and how that was used. So I'll have some suggestions after you
Awesome.
get a chance
Well,
to post
just
the edits that you
I
have.
will get it to you because I have to have it into town office by Monday.
Okay, great. I
So
promise
it
I
will
will
be
get you stuff
It will be done.
tomorrow or the weekend. All right,
Great,
thanks.
that's all. And I will, like I said, hopefully by tomorrow I will have the final draft done. So, okay, so yeah, let me just what's that? Okay.
And Nancy,
Yes.
how great is it that we have a financial analyst on the school committee?
I think it's awesome.
I think it's,
Not even bother going over,
Yeah,
in
like-
great detail, the budgetary stuff now, because I know Jen's on it.
That's great, okay. Thank you, everybody. So should we vote? Do we have to vote?
Well, I think we can trust
Vote.
you and
Okay.
Jen to make the appropriate changes.
Oh.
And yeah, I do think we have to vote to approve it, but with the recommended changes that are, going to be
Okay.
made.
So I'll make the motion to accept the school committee town report, the annual report of this Easton School Committee, and with corrections that the other members will see before it gets submitted. Do I have a second?
O'Neill second.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes?
DeLuca, yes?
Heisman, yes.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, thanks, everybody. It's just one of those things. Okay, next is vote to appoint members to the 2020-2021 school subcommittees. But wouldn't it be 2020-2021? Okay. All right, so Dr. Cabral, did you want to take this, or am I in charge of this?
No, well, these are your current
Okay,
assignments. So
Alright.
this is for your reference to see which committees are currently inactive, which committees are attended by which school committee members. And
okay.
is typically the time of year that you review this and determine any changes you would like to make or not.
And the town subcommittees are June to July, July 1st to June 30th. That the town ones are. That's
I
our
actually thought we usually did this right after the election.
election.
did we really do it this early in the year before? I apologize if after all these years, pardon me?
I couldn't remember either.
No, I always thought that we did it after the election.
Right.
I know that we've missed it a couple of years at the right time, and but because you have to get sworn in regardless by June 30th.
Only the town ones you do.
Oh yeah, the town ones, but we do them all together.
Did
Usually.
after the election, yeah.
No, it's true, but we do them all together usually. I don't ever remember us doing them this early.
Okay.
But I could be misremembering. I'd have to go back and check
No,
minutes. And
those are the town ones. These are only the ones that are school related.
The school
So
ones.
just fee, food advisory and wellness subcommittee, school planning committee, naming campaign, negotiations subcommittee, policy subcommittee, and STEAM committee. Just those
Right.
7. Not the
So
town.
is everybody happy where they are? Does anyone?
But have we split them up like this before? See, that's what I'm saying. I remember us always doing them all together, and then those that were the town ones, Lynn would send a notification to the town for us to get sworn in, you know, so that we would get sworn in before June 30th. But I always thought they were all together. Is there some reason?
We may have, but when we did the town ones, we didn't update the school committee.
Oh, okay.
We just need to
Okay.
update the school ones now.
Okay. Okay.
So is everybody all set with their committees that they're on right now?
I have to find the list again. I was actually
You want-
thinking we were just supposed to study it and vote later, so I apologize for
Well,
my
you can do that.
misunderstanding.
We can add it to the next agenda, or I can go through each one individually if you'd like. It's up to you.
Well, I just think it might be better to vote next. I just have to I have to find the packet again on my phone so I can.
Caroline,
look at them again.
you want me to just read them for you?
Um,
So you're on B.
no, yeah.
B. Food advisory is Michelle. School planning is Jackie and Caroline. Naming campaign are you and me. Negotiation subcommittee, Caroline and Jackie. Policy subcommittee, Nancy and Jackie. That's a big committee, let me tell you. STEAM committee, Michelle. So.
Okay, good. That's what I thought.
But Jen's on towns, we're all on a town one. We all
Yeah,
have.
but I think I mentioned this briefly before, but I think that the negotiation subcommittee, you know, it might make sense for Jen if she were willing and able and had the time. My assumption is that maybe at least we can think about that for when we, I've been involved in the MOAs related to the COVID protocols and so on, and probably should continue until that is over with. But I'm thinking in terms of the regular negotiation, which I guess at this point won't begin for a while, that if Jen were willing, it might be time for a new face on the negotiations subcommittee, since I think I've been on it for something like 24 of my 27 plus years. So anyway, I probably can have somebody with new ideas and a wonderful new approach. And so I don't know if we should do it now, in other words, because I suppose it makes sense for me to continue, you know, kind of the process that's in place now in terms of MOAs related to COVID protocols and school reopening and so on. But for regular negotiations, which will begin probably the end of this year, I would love to see someone like Jen, who is our resident financial expert, among other things. If you're willing, I would love to see you take my place.
So.
Thank you. I would be happy to consider that at the right time. And I think we just need to get, maybe we can talk separately about, the time commitment. I would just want to make sure that I would be able, have the flexibility. I generally do have a lot of flexibility with my day job. but just would want to make sure that I'd be able to fulfill the commitment, because I imagine that there are some meetings that need to be done during normal business hours, and just want to make sure that I can, do the role justice. So, but thank you. I appreciate your kind words and would be very interested in joining that committee at the right time.
So I understand what Caroline's saying, I kind of agree with that, but maybe what we should do is just put this off until after the election in April. Just do all the town and school groups all at once after the election in April. Does everybody agree with that?
I think as long as everyone's, fine with what the committees they're on now, there's no reason not to just do them together after the election. And at that point, it would be lovely if continuing to deal with MOAs related to COVID would be, a moot point. I suppose that's aspirational, but, I think at that point, it might make sense if Jen's able to, and if she is able to, if, you are able to look into that time commitment, and if your schedule will allow it, it may make sense in April anyway to kind of transition to a new person. I don't know, what does everybody else think? I don't get to just, grant my spot to someone. I didn't mean to imply that I have that authority to do that or anything like that. So, but what does everyone else think? I was just thinking it would be great to have someone with the kind of financial expertise that Jen has on the committee, plus her very broad-ranging perspective on many things. Anybody want to weigh in?
I think Jen would be great at that. If that's something that she's comfortable with.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Michelle and Caroline. All right, so I'm gonna make a motion that we just table school subcommittees until after the election in April. Hopefully it will happen in April. Okay? Do I have a second?
Wiseman second.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Yes.
Durant, yes?
Veruca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. All right, and we'll look at that whole list then. All right, Dr. Cabral, district updates, please.
Sure.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We have obviously been receiving a lot of questions, and we discuss at every school committee meeting during this agenda item where we are at with our planning and where we are at in terms of changing any scheduling or anything like that. We have had the same plan since August of 2020. It was the plan that was submitted to and accepted by the school committee and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Since then, different matrices and requirements have come out from the department. That original plan has met and typically exceeded any of the expectations that have transpired since then. And so we have not had to change the current plan. That's a positive. Many districts are scrambling right now. Many districts are working very hard to change their plans. They're upending their schedules completely. And not because they're trying to create more quote unquote days in school, but because they don't have enough structured learning time per DESE requirements. Structured learning time is the time that the students have interfacing and interacting with staff members, their teachers, their classmates. It can be very deceiving, and I understand it can be very confusing when someone looks at the physical time in school and makes comparisons from district to district. We have, for those that are working with this process, the department as well as our colleagues across the Commonwealth, Easton is serving as a model right now for our schedule because of the structured learning time that we do provide to our students and the quality of the time that is provided. I can't even tell you, we didn't start counting, we haven't kept a spreadsheet, but Chrissy Pruitt and myself, and actually many volunteers on our staff, have met with multiple districts at this point. We've served in consultancy roles to other superintendents across the Commonwealth based on their analysis of our plan. And that's why many of them are making changes. What do I mean by number of days and structured learning time? One quick example is that a model that we considered at first was what many people are calling the half-day model. So students attend school 5 mornings, or and cohort A and cohort B attends 5 afternoons. And the reason that didn't work for us, there were several reasons, and I'm going to go over a list of considerations that districts take into play when they are making the determination about what their schedule should be and any changes they should make. That particular schedule, for example, students are attending class for 2 hours in the morning. So they're getting 10 hours of what the department is defining as structured learning time. I'm going to keep referring to that as SLT, structured learning time. They have FaceTime with the teacher, they have FaceTime with their classmates. However, the other 4.5 to 6 hours a day, those students are working on their own. Whether they're in the 12th grade or in kindergarten or in 5th grade, they have packets that they take home. The teachers are working with the other cohort. And so those students have 10 hours of structured learning time. That comes out to 20 hours every 2 weeks. The department has set a minimum of 35 hours every 2 weeks. And so you can see why I've said those districts are scrambling right now, trying to add in extra time for their students. Because while it's great that they physically walk into the building 5 times a week, they're only getting those 10 hours with a professional, with their friends, with classmates and peers. And we did not find that sufficient for our children. We don't find that sufficient for our children, and the department does not find that sufficient for children. We also, in our schedule, students are here, they're not here for half a day. I understand, and I know I've repeated this many times, that people call our schedule a half-day schedule, but our students in a 6.5-hour day are leaving 2 hours early. So they're here over 2/3 of a day. And when you're counting structured learning time, that does make a difference. When our children go home, they're also engaging online with their teachers, professionals, and their classmates. They're doing group work. They are engaging in conversations, in discussions. They're playing games with their classmates. And that is quality learning time. They're not doing a packet or working on drills on a computer by themselves. In addition, when they're not physically in school, they are streaming into the classroom live. They're not missing that quality instruction that the teacher is providing for that 4.5-hour day. Again, the importance is quality over their physical being in the building. I know that is, again, it may be difficult to quantify, but you have to keep in mind the remote time that our students are engaging in, and that remote time shouldn't be spent just watching videos or engaging by themselves or working on packets on their own. We want it to be structured. We want them to have small group participation. We want them to get small group instruction. We want them to receive intervention services from our intervention specialists. We also built into our schedule for every single grade from pre-K to grade 12, social emotional learning time on Wednesdays. That's why our Wednesday schedule is fixed right now. If we were to alternate for 2-3 weeks, physically in school 2 days 1 week, physically in school 3 days the next week, we would lose the 100% engaged social emotional time that students have every Wednesday morning. That was purposefully, and as far as I'm concerned, our staff was very visionary in including that on Wednesday mornings. They anticipated that this would be a challenging time for our students. And every student in this district has time focused on strategies, coping mechanisms, how to deal with disappointment and worry and cooperate and collaborate with one another. And again, that is something that other districts are using as a model, and it's not something we feel is something that we can do for our kids right now when they are experiencing these social emotional issues. We're well aware, we are well aware that our children in this entire country are facing a crisis that none of us has ever faced before, that hopefully their children and grandchildren will never face in their lifetimes. This can't be compared to anything else. But we don't have these children for 1 year. We have them for 12 or 13, or depending if they come to preschool, 14 or more years. We are well aware of where any gaps in understanding are. We are not going to let children fall through the cracks. We have individual assessments on students, and we will do baselines, and we will do our continued baseline and benchline assessments as we continue with them next year. And we will make modifications to their instruction based on that. We're talking about fortifying our mental health structures. We're working on our budget already for next year, and these are many of the things that we are taking into consideration. Now, I know that there are always exceptions. There are people who frequently say, well, you're saying that's what this schedule is intended to be, it's not happening here, or my child is not having that experience. To that, I would say, just like any other year, if you're finding that what your child's experience is not up to your or the district's expectation, we ask you, we encourage you, we want you to reach out to that school. The teacher needs to know, the principal needs to know. They all understand what the expectations are, and they want to make sure that your child is getting exactly what they need. It's very difficult, especially if students are self-reporting, it's very difficult for an educator to always know what's happening. A parent's observation of their child's experience is invaluable to an educator or an administrator. And so we encourage you to let the educators and administrators know what your questions, what your concerns are, so that they can address that immediately. We are sharing our expectations widely so you know what you can anticipate for your child. If that is not happening, you need to let these professionals know. You need to let them address these issues because that is their desire. They want to do that, and again, your input is valuable. It is invaluable in helping them to do that. In terms of how comparing us to other districts, again, that is very difficult to do. Every district is different, and I assure you, Assistant Superintendent Pruitt and I are meeting with the Assistant Superintendents, the Commissioner of Education, Mass Superintendents Association, and the superintendents across the Commonwealth regularly. We speak to somebody in that group every single day, usually multiple people. Yesterday, we were in a cohort of about 45, and we were discussing these same issues. About time on learning, about structured learning time, about schedules, what's working, what isn't working. It's difficult sometimes to convey all of this information, but we're asking the same questions everyone's asking us. Knowing what our district entails, knowing what resources we have at our disposal, knowing what we offer our students, we don't want to go backwards. And when we really deeply dive into what these districts are offering, It isn't just how X amount of days in a building or X amount of hours on a computer. There are many, many considerations that come into play, and we speak to superintendents about all of them. I have talked about all of these at many different school committee meetings. I've not necessarily put them in writing on a list, but I did put together a list that I am sharing with the school committee, and I can tell you about many of the considerations. Again, I know that I have discussed these, but I think it's important that we even add the written list to our website for people that miss meetings or maybe forget some of the things that are on our list. But when somebody gives us the name of a district, first of all, I assure you, I've already spoken to that superintendent multiple times. And many times I've given them advice that's helped them tailor their schedule. And they, we go through this entire list of items to determine why and how they're doing what they're doing and why it works for their kiddos. And why and how we're doing what we're doing and why it works for our kids. So again, many of the items would include our remote model. Now, our remote model is extremely robust. And I've said this, again, I'm sorry to repeat myself, but I think it's important, especially since these are many of the questions that we continue to receive. Our remote model includes live interaction from students when they're at home. That means that if a student is ill, if they're on quarantine, if they're in isolation because they may be COVID positive, they're still able to get that top-notch quality instruction. And they're getting instruction from their own teachers with their own classmates. Several of the models across the state that people are using include things like programs like Edgenuity, which is they pay by the student. It's extremely costly. However, we would have considered it regardless of cost. However, it is not with district teachers. They're with people outside of Easton from all over the country. There very rarely is any live interaction, and not with a class. It's more like taking an online asynchronous course. We've had a lot of people across the district express extreme dissatisfaction with certain programs, whether it's Edgenuity or others, just based on comparing them to the experience a child has in the classroom with their own Easton or home teacher. It also, it doesn't allow children to interact with others. It doesn't allow for the group work. It doesn't allow for transition. So if a remote student, for example, wants to reintegrate into school, a lot of schools are not allowing that. You're either in an outside remote program for the year or you're not. Same thing if a student is hybrid or even if they're in school. If they have to be absent for any significant amount of time, quarantines sometimes run 2 or more weeks, depending on if it goes through many members of the family. Those students are out of school. There is no remote option for them. They cannot join into a remote program at that point, and so they're missing weeks of school. Whereas our students are able to log in to the classes and continue on as though they hadn't left. That is a huge consideration for us, for the continuity of the education of our kids. We have had hundreds of students who have been either on precautionary quarantines or on isolation, and they would have missed a huge bulk of their education, which is already compromised because of our current situation. Other things, I mean, I can't go into that much detail on everything on the list because we will be here quite a long time, but even simple things, what seems like a simple thing, like lunch shifts. You have to have 1/3 or 1/4 the amount of students. And so you're having lunch shifts that are 3.5 or 4 hours long in the school day. Students may be eating as early as 9:45, 10 o'clock a.m. to as late as 2:30 p.m. The square footage of every space in the building, because it's not just classrooms we have to think about. We have to think about when students get on and off buses, when they come into the building, when they go outside for recess, when they transition to classes and they're amongst one another in the hallways, when they go to the bathroom, when they go to the school nurse, when they go to auxiliary services like the library or the music room. We also have to consider emergency protocols. How many students we have, how can we exit them safely, keeping them distance. Our furniture, we're not allowed to have students facing one another. Well, we have been fortunate to have, especially in our pre-K to 2 schools, most of our classrooms had tables in them. This is great for small group work, it's great for student interaction, it's great for small hands to have wide spaces to lay out their materials. However, if students can't face one another and you have to spread tables out in a classroom, it allowed a very small number of students. We had to scramble for desks at the beginning of the year just to get the students we had coming in on hybrid in a desk. We would have to buy, and potentially may have to buy, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of furniture so that our students can sit at desks when they come into school. They all have to be facing the same way per state mandates, and so we can't have them facing one another. That's just one of our considerations. PPE and cleaning supplies, that all doubles with the amount of students you have in school. It is also an important consideration for us in making sure that our spaces are properly cleaned. For example, as I said earlier, that half-day structure, we did not feel confident in being able to sanitize and disinfect all of our spaces in the short amount of time between a morning and an afternoon class. We have staffing and substitutes. If we don't have staff in the building, we don't have observation or supervision of our students. We have to keep that in mind. Our structured learning time, again, we don't want to go backwards. If we have students in the mornings, for example, we will not be able to have teachers work with them in the afternoon because they'll be working with a different cohort. Our students would be going backwards. We have an average of 45 hours in a 2-week period of structured learning time, when the state minimum is 35 and schools with 5 school days at half a day have 20. We don't want to go backwards on the amount of time we're offering students. Our infection rates in the community, they're very, very different. You could be neighboring communities and your infection rates are going to be very different. Our school rates, if people have been following them on our website, we have been trying to communicate our concern about the spikes, the very significant spikes that we face after vacation weeks. For example, up until November 25th, we didn't have a week where there were more than 5 cases identified in the district. In the 4 weeks following Thanksgiving, we had 34 cases. We went back down to 4 cases between that and the winter break. And then following the winter break, the 3 weeks after winter break, we had 78 cases. And then the 2 weeks after that, we had another 43 cases. This is the first week that we've had 8. So we're sort of getting back down to our baseline. We don't know, of course, if that will continue, but what it does do is it sets a clear line graph of the 4 to 5 weeks after every vacation period of a significant spike. Instead of 5 or 8 per week, we have anywhere from 14 to 30 per week. Spread rates in schools are also important. We do have that under control. We want to keep that under control. Also, districts have different levels of student and family compliance with the quarantines we request, with the procedures that we request. We've been very fortunate that our parents, especially of our youngest learners, have been very, very cautious, keeping students home when they have any form of symptoms. That has really helped us to reduce our contact tracing needs. Our transportation. Some of the districts that we have spoken to own their own buses, and they have their own transportation. That means they can set any times they would like. We have 17 buses that we contract with a company, and those buses do 3 runs per day in our district. Changing one school changes the trajectory of the schedule for all 6 schools, so that it's just a consideration. Our nursing office capacities, our COVID testing options. We've discussed pool testing at length. School committee, I sent you a document today released from DESE that explained what is necessary in order to have pool testing. It validated all of the items we expressed to you, including the personnel that we just don't have. And the complications and the follow-up and the number of staff that would be out of school, etc. Our Easton Board of Health consultations, we rely very strongly on their recommendations, and we will continue to. There's so many more things to the list. I think that I wouldn't imagine most people would know what's on it, nor should they, and that's perfectly fine. We just wanted to share some of the considerations. And I say they're considerations, not roadblocks. We have not stopped looking at all of them. In fact, we have vetted out many options. In fact, many options that people have provided to us. And then at school committee meetings, I've been explaining why something in particular might not work for us, and that we're continuing to look at every angle of it. I have had people suggest to me multiple times that, I shouldn't let any unions stand in the way, or, unions shouldn't decide what we're doing. And I'm not exactly sure where that's coming from. We have had great cooperation from our unions. We've had great cooperation from our town and our Board of Health. We just have some impediments we need to work through. But again, many of the things that other districts are doing would set us backwards in terms of our structured learning time. So we aren't considering those particular items. Our 2 items that we're working on right now are social distancing and vaccines. We did have guidance come from DESE today about transportation and the requirements on social distancing. It's good news, of course. However, I don't think it will have a major impact on Easton, except that we're going to look at our numbers and let people know if they want to have their children ride on the bus, that we can increase our ridership. But to date, we haven't had a significant issue with overcrowding, and so it really hasn't been one of our considerations. The capacity on the buses hasn't been a problem for us to this point. But it does open up other opportunities, and we'll take a look at it, of course. I did ask the commissioner directly today if that would have any impact on social distancing requirements in schools, and he did not have any recommendations at this time. We are waiting for more information. The CDC has said that they're coming out with more information. We are hopeful. We know, of course, that the new director of the CDC, Dr. Walensky, is from Massachusetts. She has been very helpful in providing information that has structured what we're doing in the state of Massachusetts. And so we're waiting to see if she's going to change any of the requirements on us. Right now, the CDC is defining a close contact as 6 feet. And so we're keeping everyone 6 feet away. We don't want to tell an employee or a child that they must come into school and be a close contact to someone. And so we're looking for more guidance on that. While there are multiple medical studies out, and we've read all of them, we can assure you, in many cases, they are contradictory, and we are not the medical professionals. We are relying on Mass DPH and the CDC to synthesize that information and tell us what their recommendations are. And we're watching that very closely. We anticipate some guidance in the next day or so. We expected it yesterday, perhaps tomorrow we'll get that, and we will continue to stay on top of that, of course. In terms of the vaccinations, we have that's been changing, and I'm sure anybody who's been paying attention to this in the press is aware of that. We have been engaging with our local legislators. We have been corresponding with Governor Baker. We know that educators are in phase 2, which was scheduled to start on February 1st, and it did. However, we know that, of course, citizens 65 and older were then moved between citizens 75 and older and educators. So, of course, it did move us down a bit. And then yesterday, of course, the governor announced that as an incentive, anyone who brought a person who is 75 and older to a mass vaccination site could also be vaccinated. And so that significantly is going to impact when educators can get their vaccinations as well. So we do not have control over that. We are very extremely vocal about trying to secure these vaccines for our members. We believe this can make a significant difference for us, and we simply do not have control over it. The town has been fantastic. As you may be aware, residents may be aware, they have run some vaccine clinics, testing clinics, and they have been perfect. They have perfected it to be able to offer 250 to 300 doses a day in the town of Easton. The state is simply not releasing that amount of vaccines. They are intent on pursuing these mass vaccination sites, which they have found have been an impediment for some of our senior citizens to be able to attend, which is why they're working on incentives such as the one recently announced. But it is serving as a delay. Again, we are distressed about that, but we simply do not have control of it. And those are some very important factors when we're determining how to get our students back into the building. Our biggest impediment at this point is physical space, in addition to the furniture and some of the other items, but we don't consider any of them, as I said before, to be ultimate roadblocks. We are working on solutions with our staff right now. Speaking with them every day. I spoke to staff members yesterday. I spoke to administration the day before. Almost every day we're speaking to somebody about ideas and ways and means that we can make things happen for students that advance their experience and don't set them backwards. And so that is basically an update on where we are at. For those who have questioned why we don't have a plan, I just want to remind everyone that we do have a plan. We have a plan that can be put in place immediately. It's the same plan that is in our reopening plan. It can be found on our district website. It does list multiple matrices that would be used to make a determination. It does list the factors that would be necessary, such as being able to move to 3-foot social distancing. It's all included. And if it had needed to be updated based on changes in the state, we would have made those changes. It's a live document, but it has, to this point, stood the test of time. We are simply working on getting vaccinations and getting our school rates down. Certainly based on the longitudinal data that we have collected after vacation periods, we need to see what happens after February vacation. If after February vacation we see the spikes we've seen after the last 2 vacations, then we have to see after April vacation. Again, that is not something the school department controls, but we cannot have 30, 40, 50 cases in our district in short periods of time. We can't absorb that. It creates a tremendous number of close contacts. We have multiple staff members out. We have to have safe and secure buildings with sufficient adult supervision. And so, you know, it's always our request that the community assists us with maintaining safe practices, and whether students are in or out of school. That only helps us to move forward in our goal, which of course is to have all our students back in school immediately. There is no personal, professional, or financial advantage of us being in a hybrid model whatsoever. I couldn't even begin to identify one. It is not what anyone wants. It is a million times harder for our staff. I've said many times that our plan is one of the best for students under the circumstances, and it is not one of the best for our staff. But it is what we have to offer right now, while we continue to work on the impediments that we're dealing with. We will not stop until every child is back in our buildings. And that's what we're currently working on, literally daily. I don't know if anyone has questions about some of the items I mentioned. I know a lot of it was repetitive, but I'm happy to repeat something that I may have said before and didn't get to now as well.
Questions? Jackie, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I know you went through a lot of this information, but for me to kind of organize it in my head, I have to just go down. So if you would bear with me. So if we were to say, okay, we're comfortable with 3-foot distancing and we're bringing everyone back. So what would that mean? So transportation isn't an issue now because of the revised guidance, correct?
Well, we don't know. We would have to assess how many students are going to be participating.
Okay.
I don't think, my theory is that it would not be an issue, but we would have, I couldn't tell you definitively until we did a survey.
Okay. So we have the kids coming back in the building. They can't be at tables anymore. They have to all be at desks facing the same direction. Do we have enough desks and space now for that? In terms of classroom, I'm just talking about classroom right now.
Not everywhere. It is different in every building. So, you know, we have buildings that were built in the 50s and buildings that were built in the 2000s. They're all different shapes and sizes. We've been using spaces that aren't classrooms as classrooms for years. So it's not everywhere. In some schools, yes. In some schools, no. We definitely have a furniture need. We've vetted out as many options as we can with those tables. We tried to see if we could get plastic in between. You know, we got medical confirmation that that was not advised. It actually creates more surface area for germs to collect and would need to be cleaned regularly. We don't have the staff for that. You know, all those details of things that we've looked into. And we would have to, there are also some lingering complications. Again, I'm never going to say it's impossible because we will not be satisfied with the impossible. We're going to keep working on this. But then even if students can be 3 feet apart in the classroom, during mask breaks and during lunch, they need to be significantly further apart.
Right.
Because
it's just the way my brain works. I have to kind of check down the list.
Of course.
Can I just add to that, Jackie, if you don't mind, that one of the complexities too is when we talk about the distance in the classrooms and things like that, we also at the early elementary grades, we have 3 different buildings. So while we might be able to do it in one building, we may not be able to do it in another building. So how do we say, oh, all the kindergartners can come back in one building, but not in the other 2 buildings? You know, that's one of that I can't wait for this new building to be built, by the way, because that will limit that. But that is definitely a challenge that we have been facing because of the way that the class sizes are in one building compared to the other, and space. So as a parent, I might say, well, I've walked by my child in the Google Meet and seen that there's definitely space in a classroom. Well, where it may be in one case, it may not be in another. And that's really hard for us to just say, okay, this one class can come back, but not others.
So that's not necessarily a we need desk issue, that's also a physical space of the classroom issue?
Yes, that's just that one example. We do need desks because our elementary classrooms had transitioned to tables.
Okay.
You know, just because of collaborative learning environments, that's
Yeah.
best practices. And right now we have been utilizing desks to fit half of the class. So then we would need to double that amount, and we can't put a high school desk, unfortunately, in a first grade classroom. I even, you know, have asked, can we lower the desk? Is it adaptable? But unfortunately, the way that the desks are that we may have at the high school, as an example, they wouldn't we couldn't use them in our primary classrooms.
And so in other districts where they've done this and they've purchased desks, is that right? Do you know where the funding had come from to get those desks?
Yes. In some districts, the town gave it to them. In other districts, the parents pulled together the money to get it. Some people used their CARES funding because they didn't need it for PPE or nurses like we did. There are many, many examples.
Okay.
Mhm.
So then, so that's the classroom. So then with mask breaks and lunches, I know with mask break, they're still trying to take them outside as much as possible.
Yes, and we need to remember that the milder weather is coming, and we are also taking that into consideration, just like we did when school opened.
So for lunch, and I know it's different, it's a kind of a different situation between the different grade levels, but so if you had, just because I'm familiar with RO, so in RO, you have normally 3 lunches, like 100 kids per lunch, 200 kids per lunch, however many. So obviously you can't do that. How would you? So how are other districts doing, or how would you split up the lunch, say for a 3rd grade? For the 3rd grade at RO, how would you manage that?
So what some districts are doing is they're utilizing other spaces in the school. For example, they might use a library. Well, we're using the library for a classroom because we have some classrooms where we couldn't fit enough students in them. Some schools are having students spread 6 or more feet apart in their cafeteria. And so a lunch shift for 3rd grade, instead of being 30 minutes, is an hour and a half because they have 3 different shifts of students going through.
And so it would be like an hour and a half for 3rd grade, an hour and a half for 4th grade, an hour and a half for 5th grade.
Or an hour, yes, potentially, sure.
And so with the other districts, are they still having kids sit at tables 6 feet apart, or are they having to get desks, or how are they managing that? Do you know?
They are, yeah. For example, I don't know if people remember when the commissioner visited Concord, Massachusetts earlier in the year and said, look, this is a successful example of bringing some kids back. The Concord superintendent just took hundreds of, I think he said $400,000 out of his school budget and bought hundreds of desks and filled the cafeteria with desks. Concord can afford that. Easton does not have that money available to purchase desks for our schools. We have cafeteria tables in our schools right now. We have no desks that are extra because we put all of them in our classrooms.
So other districts are just having elongated lunch periods to space out the kids. Okay. So then,
and the size of the extra spaces are different as well. So, you know, I think about the district I live in, and the size of the cafeteria is much larger than the size of the cafeteria at our middle school. And so, you know, they might be able to accommodate more than our middle school would be able to. Then
they might have a gymnasium.
Exactly.
About center school. The gymnasium is the same room for everything, basically. It's the only large space in the entire building. It's the gym, it's the cafeteria, it's the music room, it's everything. You can't, you can have gym outside in a school that has a gymnasium and use the gymnasium and the cafeteria and the library for lunch, for example. We physically do not have those spaces right now.
Okay, and then so for going back to the classroom for a minute, so kids are 3 feet apart. The definition of a close contact is 6 feet, within 6 feet. So say, for example, you have a classroom of 20 kids and they're all 3 feet apart. And then one of the children is exposed outside of school. And so then how does that affect the number of kids that end up in quarantine, and how does that affect the teacher? Like, would the teacher just automatically then have to go into quarantine, or how would that work?
Depends where they are in the room. We're very strict about cohorts where possible. Like, it's not really as possible to have strict cohorts in the high school, but in elementary school it is. And we have assigned seating for every student in every classroom throughout every period of the day, whether it's high school or elementary. So we would look at that list. It would, in theory, it would double the number of students that are identified. For a high school student going to 6 periods a day, that could be many students, because it could, depending on how close they are, it could be everyone around them, as opposed to in front, behind, side to side. Now you're including the diagonals. You could even be including somebody at the next table. It depends if they're sitting in the front of the room now, the desks are closer to the teacher or the paraprofessional or whatever educators in the room. And now, yes, the educator would also be identified as a close contact. Yes.
So if the teacher has to go out, so so if the teacher has to go out, who takes over the classroom? I know subs are kind of difficult. Are there staff that can fill in? How would that work?
Subs are almost impossible. As I've said before, most of our substitutes have been perhaps stay-at-home moms or people who are retired looking for occasional work. Those are exactly the populations that don't want to be in buildings with a lot of people right now. And so we have had a very limited number of substitutes at our disposal. Whether, what you're asking, it's very,
I know it's
individual, because if the teacher's ill, for example, we can't ask them to even work remotely, obviously. If the teacher can work remotely, you still need to have some person in the classroom supervising the students, so you need to get a substitute. In the past, what we have been able to do is sometimes combine classrooms. We can't do that now, because then you're effectively doubling the number of kids in a room. It compromises the amount of adult supervision that we have. Sometimes we have to pull in a school adjustment counselor or a school psychologist or a principal, which means that any crises or emergencies happening around the school are not getting addressed in the way that they typically should or that we want to happen. Services may not take place because we have to pull people to cover classes. It's been an extremely trying year in that sense.
And so if all the kids were coming back 3 feet, would we get rid of the remote option, or the remote option still stay in place?
Well, that's one of the things that we're investigating. And I think maybe some parents may not realize that if we bring all of the students back, we will not be able to have teachers working with those students and teachers online simultaneously. So we're investigating other options. For example, if students are learning remotely on a platform, now they're getting pulled out of their classes. They are working asynchronously all day long with a professional service. If we pulled teachers for the remote level, for remote classrooms at the elementary levels, not only now are we, again, any remote students now are pulled from their classes and working with that remote teacher, but also the teacher that's going to be the remote teacher for that grade or teachers for that grade, now their entire class has to be split up amongst the other classrooms, because if they're teaching remotely, they can only teach remotely. So the students that they've been serving in hybrid in their classroom now have to be distributed to all different classrooms.
Okay.
So there are ways, and school districts are doing them. We're just trying to have as limited disruption to students as possible. So other districts are making it work that way. We find that to be extremely disruptive to students, especially in elementary levels. And while, again, we're not ruling out everything, we're trying to find things that are less disruptive and anxiety provoking for students.
And then, all right, so say there's an exposure in a classroom and 4 kids in this classroom now have to, their close contacts or their parents are out or whatever the situation is, they're now out for 2 weeks. Are they out of school for 2 weeks? Can they still remote into their classes? Do they go into the remote program, or are they just missing school for 2 weeks?
It depends what remote program we're able to secure. Not all programs are accepting districts, but even if we were accepted, they don't take kids on a 1 or 2 week basis, and they certainly don't know what our teachers are working on at any given time. So it would be very generic work that the students would be given from people that they don't know and that don't know them. The students would be out of school like they were in a typical sick day in the past. Teachers would try to provide makeup work, but we have seen students out on quarantine, as I said, from 2 up to 6, 7 weeks at times, because they may be a close contact to a parent and then a sibling gets it. Now they're a close contact to a sibling, another sibling gets it. Now they're a close contact to that sibling, and then they get COVID, and now they're out because they have COVID, and it's been months at a time for some students. They would not be able to remote into the classroom. It's an advantage of our model that we would lose altogether, that some districts have sacrificed, but we're trying to find alternatives that would work better for our students. We don't feel right now that that would be the best situation for them.
And so if there was an exposure in a classroom, would you ever just say, okay, the whole class is out, everyone's remote in, the teacher will teach this remotely, this classroom for the next 2 weeks?
We have done that, but that doesn't work everywhere because we have teachers that team teach. And so if one teacher is out, there may be 2 classrooms out because of that. Or at the high school, if one teacher is out, it's not a 1 class to 1 teacher ratio. Same thing for the middle school. It's not that clean. It doesn't work that way everywhere.
Okay. I think those are all my questions for now. I'm just gonna mull a little bit.
I just wanted to add on, it's not saying that anything is off the table. It's just, these are all the considerations that we consistently are talking about over and over and over again. And we're really trying to come at it from every angle to say, what would it mean for this kid? What would it mean for this kid? Well, yes, it would be great for all these kids. We have to really think about all of the students. And that's where, we just keep rehashing and going over, the consequences for the kids. We also know that right now what our kids are going through is not great. While we're proud of the model that we have right now, just them dealing with COVID itself and everything, and for the amount of time that this has been going on, our kids are struggling, and we know that. And I know, I always say how proud I am of everyone, because I am. And don't worry, Caroline, I won't cry again. But I just want to just note and make it aware that we are very aware of the struggles our kids are going through, and we are trying really hard to get them back. Our teachers want them back. We want them back. We know that all the parents want them back. We know school committee wants them back. We're just trying our best to get that done quickly and safely. Safely is the key word.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even talk about the struggles. I'll break down. It's been very tough. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Jennifer, go ahead.
First, Jackie, thank you for going through that, because those were literally the same questions that I was going to ask, and the same process that I've gone through, and the questions that people are asking me, and kind of the steps I've had in discussing this with, I've heard from, parents in our district who teach in other districts that are making some changes, and, well, this is what we're doing, why can't that work for us? And so that was a very helpful exercise. One area that I do get asked about a lot is the, can we at least get more hours in the day? And I think the reasoning behind the shorter schedule for the grades where facilitators are absolutely critical to keeping that live synchronous learning going is, to me, very clear. And I know we have a lot of attendees tonight. They've probably heard this, but that prep time is critical for the teachers to be able, having the facilitators who are making synchronous hybrid learning happen would normally be what provides teachers prep time during their day. So moving that to the end of the day makes this happen. Where I do get questions and would love for you to be able to reiterate is and I think we've talked about actually at the high school level with their rotating schedule, and that most of the classes can probably run without a facilitator, and many or most are running without facilitators. It probably wouldn't be that difficult, if I understand, to do a full day, other than now we get into the whole lunch and cafeteria and all that, but just from a scheduling perspective, my understanding though, the big linchpin there was transportation shared with the middle school, and that the middle school was particularly complex with scheduling with the teams and with other, building capacity with shared spaces and everything like that. So I'm wondering if you could just reiterate that. I know we talked about it in the past, but it's something that people do ask about pretty frequently, that, and not even getting into whether it would be even equitable to think about doing a longer day for, older students, but not younger students. That's a different conversation, but I just want to address the schedule piece of it. If we could again, reiterate what the challenges we see there are.
Sure. So, before I explain that, I just want to say that we are considering all schools separately. We don't think all or nothing, except for pre-K to 2. We do try to keep them together for equity, as you said. Other than that, we are looking at them all separately and how we can make things happen for one school, even if it's before another school, because it's not even necessarily an issue of equity, because there are different needs for high school students than there are for early learners. So having one group come back before another doesn't necessarily mean it's not equitable. So we are looking at them all individually. For the lower grades, in order to make this model work, and I have had a significant amount of feedback from parents who confirm that the remote time with the facilitators is going extremely, extremely well. We have to rely on our professional educators to communicate to us what they need to make this happen. As you know, Chrissy Pruitt observed dozens and dozens of classrooms over weeks, and not because we didn't trust what the educators are saying, but because we thought it was extremely important to capture that and report that out to you, which she did. And we concur wholeheartedly that the facilitators, especially with our youngest learners, are extremely important in engaging the students, making sure that nobody is falling through the cracks, and that things run smoothly, so that students don't have to stare at a computer screen for long amounts of time. They have breakups in that, whether it's going into a breakout group or whether they're watching something or doing an activity or communicating with their peers and so forth. And so it has been an extremely successful model. At the sacrifice of our educators, because it's extremely difficult to maintain that level of effort. Contractually, all educators deserve and get planning time. In this model, that planning need has exponentially increased. I can't even give it a number. It has increased exponentially, and if we, in order to, normally in a school schedule, so if we're talking about scheduling, you have teachers who have prep periods throughout the day. So a first grade classroom may be taking place while second grade has a prep period, and then a third grade class is going to music, so that teacher has a prep period. It's a very complicated system, and it involves, you know, their lunchtime, obviously. If we were to, people ask, why can't you, what's the big deal? Just add those 2 hours, it's not a big deal. I understand it seems as though it's not a big deal. However, we had to pull on every single person, body, professional, even non-educators we have in the district, in order to be facilitators, to cover classrooms, to serve as substitutes and so forth, that every educator's prep period, maybe one or two very significant outliers for specific reasons, all of them have their prep period at the same time at the end of the day. If we were to bring back the regular schedule, we would not have the online platform that we do. And so again, we are considering, is it worth the cost? And I don't mean financial cost, I mean the cost to our children, to have remote learners completely working with outside agencies with no opportunity to return to the classroom before the end of the school year, with students who have no opportunity for maintaining their education if they need to be out of the class for any period of time, and to be learning with people who are not Easton Public School employees, who don't share our values, our curriculum, our belief, our pedagogy. That is a very serious consideration. And so we are still reviewing that. So while it seems like only 2 hours, that's when the prep period and the lunch takes place. If we talk about the high school, for example, yes, they are better at being able to engage their older learners just by nature of the fact that they're older learners without facilitators. That's not exclusive. We're still making use of facilitators in the building, and we have even a greater need for them. However, their schedule is vastly different than an elementary schedule for obvious reasons. We have been able to work on a schedule. Again, the educators worked on this. We did not hand them something. This is in their professional opinion, what is best for the students during this limited time. Instead of a drop block schedule where students miss a class every day and it rotates, students are getting every class every day. The teachers felt that that was extremely important at this time, to make contact with all of their students every single day. Another consideration was a concentrated social emotional learning time on Wednesdays. They want to maintain that as well. It's also important for the teachers to be able to plan together. I honestly don't know how we would have gotten this far if people weren't able to pool their resources, their understandings, their teachings to one another to this point. And so maintaining that time they have together in the afternoon has been critical to their success. And they have communicated that loud and clear to us. If we were to revert to the regular schedule, again, I have prep A block, the teacher next door has B block, the teacher next to them has C block. That's just the way that the schedule works. There isn't a way to provide simultaneous time together in the schedule otherwise. So that is the feedback we've been getting consistently from our educators. This is something we work on every day. Again, we're not making excuses for anything. We literally, we've been here since 7 this morning. Up until this meeting, we've been working on this all day long. This is what we do every day. So we are continuing to work on it, and we won't stop continuing working on it.
Jackie?
I was just wanted to follow up on something. I'm not sure it's this, but with regards to contact tracing, has there been any movement in how we could get more people other than the two of you to be able to do contact tracing?
So I've actually worked with, actually today, one of our administrators at the high school assisted in that while I was on the meeting. So we've definitely been moving in that direction where it's a process that unfortunately is becoming a little too familiar, right? So it's becoming too familiar with us, but that is something that we've worked on over the past couple weeks to try and not hand off some of the work, but that's not what I'm misrepresenting that. It's we actually think that it might be more efficient if so one of our staff members at the high school, for example, could say, because we're looking at seating charts, they're saying, well, actually the seat is more than 6 feet apart, so that child doesn't need to be considered a close contact. So we are doing that, and it's, but also it's been helpful that there's been fewer cases this week.
I have just, for me, I have the last 3 or 4 weeks, I have significantly scaled back on the contact tracing, thanks to Chrissy's efforts largely, but it's just not possible because of the work that we're trying to do.
I just have a couple of questions. First of all, we did get, in the last couple of weeks, got a lot of emails, and I think everybody got them. Some of them I just got myself, but one of the things was a request for another survey like you had back in, was it August or September? Is it feasible? Is it a possibility? Are there things that we need to find out, or do we already know what the plan? We already know what the plan is, but would it be helpful to have a parent survey?
I haven't gotten the email you got about a survey. What are the questions?
Going back to school 3 feet apart, which you have just answered. And I think just a lot of parents, like Jackie was talking about, just getting the kids back into school for so many reasons. I know you just answered the whole thing, but I did say that I would ask about a survey. So I don't know if it's helpful or not helpful, but is it a possibility?
I want students back. It's not really a I'm not disputing that parents want students back. We want the students back. I don't think it would tell me anything we don't know. I think people want their students back in school. However, it's not just whether they're 3 feet or not. It's all of those considerations. That wouldn't be the only question, and it's not just the parents. We have 600 staff members who are here, who are adults, who are medically compromised, who are over 65 years old, who are working with students very closely every day. We have to work with them as well to make sure that they are safe in our buildings. And if they're always within 3 feet of 30 kids or however many students they're going to be working with, depending on how many classes they teach, we're going to have a lot of people identified as close contacts. We may have a lot of people who are ill. We have a lot of people we have to think about, and it's, as much as I would like to say we can do whatever we want to right now, we're in a pandemic and we don't have control over that. I know it's frustrating, but focusing ire on staff or administration or school committee, suggesting this is something we're not working on, it isn't productive. It's not helpful. It isn't accurate. I get it. Everybody's frustrated. We are as well. As I said, there is not one benefit to any of us for having students working remotely. This is a nightmare for everyone. We want it to end immediately, but we have a litany of considerations that we have to take into account. And the least of that is if parents want their kids close to other kids. That's not even in our purview. The CDC definition that we are mandated to follow is 6 feet for contact tracing. We have to identify people and notify them and exclude them from our school environment when they're within 6 feet. We don't have a choice. I know it's frustrating, and I feel horrible. It's crushing. This is not why any of us got into education, is to provide a less than stellar experience for our kids. We're doing everything humanly, financially, emotionally possible for every single child in our care, as well as our staff members.
Going back to the lunch. Now, I know we had talked about this before, the lunch in the classrooms. So the kids are already 6 feet apart in a classroom, and the food service said that they could help out in any way possible. I believe I heard that this summer. I mean, is that a possibility? I know it would have to be supervised, of course, but I mean, is that even possible? Maybe like in some school, maybe not, depending on the room in the cafeteria, that kind of thing. I don't know. I'm just asking.
We have lunch in the classrooms, pre-K to 2.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're the only school that has lunch.
Right.
I'm talking about the other 3 schools.
The other schools our elementary schools are our smallest schools. So it's possible for food service to literally deliver classroom packages of prepackaged food to every classroom. We don't have enough bodies to do that in our high school, our middle school, Richardson, Olmsted. Those schools have 1,000 students, more than 1,000 students at the high school. Cut that in half, theoretically, because of hybrid. They can't physically go to every classroom and maintain lunch periods. And we can't have students en masse going to the cafeteria to pick up food. Again, we are working on it. We're not giving up on it, but we're trying to look at alternative means. And part of that includes asking other districts how they do it, how they're doing it. Again, 9 times out of 10, they tell us about their facilities or their staffing or how they just hired a bunch of extra people. And we don't have that. And many of the grants even that we were given for federal stimulus money doesn't allow us to hire people. It's strictly for PPE or cleaning agents or something other than what we need the most is people. But not only do we not have the money for it, the people aren't out there. All of us districts are fighting one another for the people that are available right now. It's extremely difficult to get people to come into our buildings. The other thing is when students have lunch, that is traditionally when the teacher has lunch. Contractually, if every teacher walked out of the classroom when their children were eating lunch, we would have to double the staff to have supervision for those kids, because that's why cafeterias are used, for you to put large groups of students together. You can have 8 classrooms together in the cafeteria while 8 teachers have their lunch. If everybody's having lunch at the same time, the teachers can't leave to have their lunch. Again, that's a contractual obligation and a human need, frankly. It's It's not just can they fit in the room, there are other considerations.
Okay. You had spoken about when all kids are back, that you wouldn't have that remote possibility. Talking about an outside agency. So I'm kind of curious about that. So if you have a classroom, you're working hybrid right now, remote 2 days, in school 2 days, that kind of thing. I don't understand that when the kids come back and you say they're 3 feet apart or whatever they are, but there are students that are going to be working remote no matter what, why could they not still be on part of that classroom on the platform? I'm just confused about that.
Outside, they can remain with the outside agency. It wouldn't be a platform in the classroom anymore.
That's what I'm asking, why not?
Because the teacher can't double the number of students they have in front of them and still teach remote students online.
But what I'm saying is, right, so let's say the class is 25 kids, and 20 of them come back, 5 are still remote. I don't understand why, or is it possible for this to happen, that you will have your computer and the kids' faces in front of you on whatever platform it is, Google Classroom or whatever. I don't understand why they can't still be part of the class instruction even though they're at home. I mean, the teacher is going to be teaching the 20 students that are in front of them, and the computer would be, you know, her camera, whatever it is that people watch. Okay, you're shaking your head. Tell me why you can't.
Because it doesn't work that way. For the youngest learners, the facilitators work the camera. You can't have someone watching 18 6-year-olds with 6 kids on camera. Somebody could be choking on camera, somebody could walk away, somebody could shut it off. Like, they have to have constant supervision, and vice versa. It is extremely difficult for these teachers to teach simultaneously the students in the room and online, and they're barely making it right now with the number of students they have in front of them. It would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to ask them to teach those more students and simultaneously teach the students on a screen.
I think what would happen too is that you would have, you know, the teacher would be so excited to have those 20 kids in front of them, right? I mean, that's fantastic. They get more in-person learning time, but then a lot of the time, I'm a former elementary teacher, so my mind immediately goes to elementary. I think of those first graders, those 5 first graders that are at home, and Mrs. Pruitt, can you help me? You know, all this, and the time that will be taken away from the kids that are in person that need that because, you know, of the things that they've been missing. I just, and to have the teacher have to keep up with the pace of what they're doing currently for 5 kids. I mean, we have to do it. We have to educate all kids, but it's just not an ideal model. It would be doing the same, but just having more kids in class. And if we're saying that this model, you know, is not the best, when we get more kids in class, we want more in-person, face-to-face with them. Having that other platform going on is just going to be, it's going to be very, very challenging. And again, more of the same, just having more kids in front of them.
And the students that are virtually attending classes now, they're not watching TV. They're not just watching the class take place. The teachers are actively engaging with them. They are putting them in breakout groups with kids who are physically in the classroom. They're asking them questions. They're letting them answer things that are written on the board or engage with kids in the room. They're not just, that's not a quality experience for a child to just sort of be a voyeur in the room and just watch the class learning with a teacher. That's not the experience we're looking to provide for kids. That's not what they're doing right now.
All right, so the outside agency, what's the cost on that?
It depends on which one. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
okay? And what about the 600 and something personnel? You still don't have anybody that could be a facilitator for the 5 kids that are at home? Like most classrooms usually have that, well, I shouldn't say most. A lot of the classrooms have that second person in there as the facilitator anyway. So no,
No, they don't have, most, no,
you don't have people.
no.
We're
Okay.
utilizing learning specialists that are providing
Oh,
services.
I understand,
Yeah.
I get it, you're using everybody. I'm just asking. And my other question about the hundreds of thousands of dollars for furniture, could that come out of CARES money?
We need our CARES money we have 3 sub-nurses who are in here full-time. We have an exorbitant bill for disinfection, for masks for students, for gloves and gowns and shields for the nurses. We need our money for that.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else have any questions before we go to public comment?
I'll do a quick, and I'm not sure, maybe I didn't understand, maybe Nancy asked this. Currently, we have facilitators in all our schools. Is that a correct statement?
No.
In what schools do we?
Well, we have them in every school, but every teacher in every school doesn't have one.
Okay, but they're in every school. So hypothetically, if we were back in a more in-person model or full-person model, the upper grades wouldn't necessarily need facilitators. Could those people be redeployed to the younger, the K-2 schools for those 5 people that Nancy's
No, because if you think about a schedule during the day, when a teacher's on a prep period, students still need supervision. You still need people in the building to supervise those kids. Everybody doesn't go on break at the same time.
Okay.
But also some of the
We're not overstaffed in any of our schools. We're minimum staffed even when we're not in.
I mean, it's theoretically, it sounds like it could work. However, when you think about some of the people that are facilitating, so like a learning specialist, providing special ed services for remote students and students in person, we can't then take them because they need to still provide services. We can't take them and move them to another building. So that's one example. We also have reading interventionists that are servicing kids within the classroom. Again, we can't take them from one building and use them in another. Because the kids are more independent at a particular grade level.
Yeah, the facilitators are not people who are facilitating all day. We're patchworking all day long. So a reading specialist is offering services maybe 3 hours out of the day, and then 15 minutes or an hour here and there, they're facilitating in classrooms, and then somebody else comes in and facilitates for the teacher. It's an entire patchwork. And the school would lose all of their ancillary services if those people were pulled and sent to other schools.
Have we looked at, so those 5 kids here and there that Nancy's referring to, could they become their own class with one teacher?
They're all different grades.
That's what I'm wondering, what those numbers would look like.
And if they were in one class, we would have to switch their teacher, and then the teacher that has a group of kids would then those kids would all have to be deployed into different classrooms.
We've investigated that as well. We've investigated every single thing that you're talking about, which is why we're happy to answer your questions. And we looked at that. We do have numbers where we could, in some grades, have a remote teacher just for those kids. We just want to make sure everybody understands. It means that any student who is a remote student leaves their classroom, gets a new teacher in March, April, May, whatever it is, new students from a bunch of different rooms all put together. That teacher then has to figure out how to reconcile what 12 different 3rd grade teachers have been doing with their students, where they're at, what they're doing, meet them for the first time, learn about them, read their IEPs, understand their services, and the same thing happens all over again with that teacher. If I'm a 3rd grade teacher and I volunteer to be the remote 3rd grade teacher, my 24 students now get distributed against all the other teachers. So they're physically, same thing. They're all going into new classrooms. They're meeting new teachers who are learning all about their services. Again, we're not saying it's impossible, but people need to understand what that entails. And it could be their child that this is happening to.
Jen?
Wait,
And I would imagine that
Sorry, wait, Jen, Michelle wants
Sure,
to
yeah.
think, sorry.
back to the lunch question. When we get to a point where we can entertain that idea, I know a lot of parents have said they're willing to help out. I also know that, COVID protocols and whatnot, you can't have extra people in the classroom. But for a lunch possibility, I'm just going to use the high school as an example. Could a table be set up, or a couple of tables outside the atrium with parent volunteers? Kids come down, grab their food outside, then go back and eat in their classroom.
First of all, that would be a very limited number of students.
Well, you could do that setup in every school. I'm
talking about just the high school, right? So if it's just the high school and you have, 40 kids or something, typically we have hundreds in a cafeteria. That is extending your lunch periods throughout the day. And again, typically when the students are having lunch, the teacher is having lunch. So now the teacher's done with their lunch, they go back to the classroom and 2/3 of their room is still cycling through lunch. So it completely convolutes the schedule. The second thing is we have made use of parent volunteers. If a parent wants to volunteer, I've said this many times, call central office and apply to be a substitute. You don't have to volunteer, we'll pay you. We are desperately looking for substitutes. Parent volunteers are extremely difficult to coordinate. The number of staff we would need, you would literally need a coordinator to schedule everyone, make sure they show up. Difficulty with having volunteers is you don't pay them. If their child is sick that morning, they're gonna stay home. We don't have substitutes for volunteers. If somebody doesn't show up, you can't tell students you can't have lunch today because 2 of our volunteers didn't show up to bring your lunches to your rooms or what have you. It's a very, very difficult thing to schedule and to be consistent. We're also trying to limit the amount of people that are in our buildings. But I'm telling you, substitutes would be the biggest help. And we've said this repeatedly, but people are not applying to be subs. And I don't understand why. If they're saying they want to volunteer, apply to be a substitute. Please.
Right. That's it for now. Yeah, I think so for now.
Okay, Jen?
This is just back to the conversation about, if we were to try to combine fully remote students into a separate virtual only class. I would imagine that at the middle school and certainly the high school level, that would be extremely, extremely difficult, if not darn near impossible.
It's totally different because it's one thing to combine a bunch of 3rd graders into a 3rd grade class. At the high school, not only do you have multiple different courses, you have different levels, you have different grades in those levels, you have electives. It would be impossible to find a class of physics students of the same year and the same level who needed the same thing in the same period, because otherwise it throws off all the rest of their schedule with the other classes they're taking.
Yep.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Cabral right now? Okay. Go ahead, Caroline.
I just kind of wanted to make an observation. I do appreciate people's efforts to send us information about what's happening with their own children, and in many cases, copies of research articles. Of course, I think most of us are reading most of those articles on our own as well. But I think that sometimes it seems as though people feel like we can just flick a switch and, bring all the kids back. And that for some reasons that we keep explaining, that's very difficult. But I think that sometimes people just are not accepting or fully understanding all of those reasons. But I have parents that contact me, or I see comments on social media that clearly are very happy with the hybrid model and feel that it would not be safe for their children to be back full in person. And I think that the parents who are advocating so strongly for children to be back full in person don't always understand that that isn't going to include all of the children, and it may not even include the majority of children, because this kind of notion that what one's own children need right now, at least from the parent's perspective, should just be the model. And we don't need to be concerned about what other parents feel comfortable with. I think that a lot of parents whose children are hybrid have done that risk-benefit analysis, and I think it's a good one, have decided that with the 6-foot distancing and the masks and the other protocols that are in place, their children are quite safe. I think that from what those parents are posting or telling me, they don't feel that 3 feet would be safe. They don't feel that twice as many children in the classroom will be able to adhere to the protocols as well. So sometimes I see comments by parents who want children back full in person, and I agree with Dr. Cabral, we all want that. But sometimes I see comments, well, those kids can just go remote. If a parent isn't comfortable with 3 feet, their child can just go full remote. It's a disappointing response, because there's the child who has to go full remote, who's really doing very well in hybrid, is probably not going to respond well to full remote at all. That's probably not a good solution for that child. So I think that it's important for all of us to think about everyone's children when we're, kind of analyzing what the best approach is. And I can certainly agree that we have many flaws in our model, but I think that it's kind of like we've distributed the flaws evenly among the population. It's sort of the nature of compromise. When no one's happy, obviously we'd all love to go back to October 2019 and have our setup be the same as it was then. But we can't do that during the pandemic. And the other thing I wanted to say is that these new variants are serious business. And in other countries, within 6 to 8 weeks sometimes, the new variants take over. So I think that we are having, fortunately, a sort of lull in the number of infections right now. But many scientists feel that that is going to be a short-term lull, and that things are going to get worse again until we can somehow balance the number of people who can get vaccines and the increased risk that the new variants present. So I think that it's very complicated, but I really do urge people to try to understand that there's no kind of unknown motive for us to be reluctant to move to another model right now. As Dr. Cabral has stated in all the possible ways she can, it's just so complex. And the administration is working on it every day, and we all have the same goal, which is to get kids back full in person. But there are so many obstacles to doing that right now. And as I said, we can't just flip a switch. And the other thing I will mention is that we have an obligation to negotiate any change in work conditions with our teachers. We engage in a lengthy collaborative negotiation to ensure that the teachers all feel comfortable and safe. It's true that teachers want children back full in person too, But as Dr. Cabral alluded to, there are many teachers who would not feel safe yet with a full in-person model because of the coronavirus. So we can't just say we're going to do this without reaching an agreement with our teachers. That's just the way it works. And so people need to be aware of that and need to be aware that we want everyone to be safe, children and staff and teachers. Okay, that's my little rant for today.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions right now before we get to public comment? All right, so Chrissy, is it okay to go right to public comment with you?
Sure, we have a lot here, so I'm going to try and sort through some. I will also mention that those that have profanity, I will not be reading if that's okay with the school committee.
Yes, thank you. And Chrissy, if there's like double, the same question asked twice, 3 times, just do it once. Okay, thank you.
The first question is from Erica Mandel, 50 Main Street. You just stated after the in-person time, they go home to do group work. This is not happening, not at all. Please explain where this is happening. I know that Dr. Cabral had mentioned earlier that if this is not happening, please contact your building principal. And I just wanted to also add to that, if you don't mind, that we do have students that get home and after they have lunch or once they transition home, they do have remote work to do where a teacher is not live with them, because that is when the teacher is planning, and that's also when the teacher is eating his or her lunch. So that is a reality, and I don't want everyone to think that we're saying that once they get home, they're back on with teachers live, but they should be receiving some sort of live instruction in the afternoon, and if that is not happening, then please alert your building principal.
Right. We are aware that parents are aware of their child's experience and maybe a friend or some friends, but we're aware of what's the expectation is and what our observations are of thousands of students. If that is not happening, it is an anomaly, and we are asking you to contact your school so it can be remedied. Please.
The next statement question is from Allison. Oh gosh, I butcher these names. I'm so sorry, everyone. Piantadosi, 27 Priscilla Road. This quality learning time you're discussing does not work for all children, and when a special education student cannot learn online, for those 3 hours, it's pointless to be online. When you cannot fit these special education students in the classroom at 6 feet, what are you doing to get these kids in school? When the educators at the school cannot do anything more to help your child with these regulations, what is your plan and what can parents do further?
So, and thank you for your email today. I did get it. I did forward it to the school principal and the director of special education, and then this meeting started and I wasn't able to answer you. However, we would not exclude, we have special education and mental health professionals for our students. If someone feels as though their child is in need of some other services, they need to contact the school and they can best direct them. There are some things that parents may believe is a special education issue or a special education need, but the professionals will be able to discern for you if that is the case or not. Now, our expectation is that if a student is in such dire need that they need to be in for 4 days, that the school would contact the parent before the parent ever contacted the school. However, when a parent contacts the school has to take that into consideration. It is not because there isn't space, because we would make space. It would be a determination because the school has determined that that child either can benefit from some other services or so they can provide them with strategies to help them succeed out of school time and not necessarily 4 days. And again, if that isn't happening, you need to contact the school. And if you are not getting that from the school, at that point, you could contact us. I am not the best person to contact about a particular student or an assignment because I don't work with that child directly every day. My role is to make sure that the staff and the principals are doing what is expected of them. So to contact me to ask about an IEP for a child or a particular service for someone, I would not be able to provide the best answer for that, which is why I direct people back to the school, not because they don't want to help, but because you can get your most expeditious answer and the best answer, the most cogent answer from the professionals that work with the children every day. If you feel that that is not happening, I then deal with an administrator or faculty member that is not following through on our commitment. And we ask that you follow that as the protocol. Let me know when there is someone that you feel needs to be addressed, and I will absolutely take care of that. But other than that, the best course of action is to contact your school. If 4 days are not offered, there should be follow-up strategies. There should be a follow-up plan. There should be follow-up support services in place for the child. We have those in the district, and we have those to offer. So please advocate for your child, speak to the school, and let us know if that is not happening, like I said.
The next question is from Kathleen Sheehan, Harrison Avenue. And I actually have a good answer to this if you let me answer. Sorry, I don't mean to take away answers from you, but do you have the data regarding how many districts are not providing synchronous remote learning? Can I just share the website that they can go to? Sure. So there's a great website, and you actually have access to this data. It's on the DESE website, and all you have to do, sorry, I just got sidetracked here. All you have to do is go to the Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and once you're there, you go to data reports, and data reports, you can find the dashboard that shares every single district's learning profile right now, which includes their student learning time. And so I will tell you that when you look at the SLT distributions, what you want to see are the blue and the, wait, let me just double check and make sure this is right. The blue and the yellow, you want to see that the district has little red. So that it's like a bar, because the blue and the yellow is the actual live or fully engaged instruction that they're getting, where the red, and you'll see Easton's has a smaller bar of red in comparison to other districts. So that is data that is available to you. You can go through every district in the Commonwealth and find that data. So you'll see that there are some districts that have a large chunk of red, and that means that they are getting asynchronous instruction. So I just wanted to share that information, and I don't know if you wanted to say anything else. Okay. Kathleen Sheehan, Harrison Ave again. Can you please speak to the data that indicates the 3 feet is just as effective as 6 feet when layered with other mitigation strategies such as masks and ventilation?
You want me to answer? I didn't know if you wanted to take turns. That's
No,
fine.
I just had that answer like at my fingertips.
No, that's perfect.
Website.
No, I appreciate that. I'm not sure I understand the question. That 3 feet is just as effective as 6 feet? Oh,
that's what it says. When
that
layered
are out now that say that 3 feet is just as effective. Is that okay? Again, the definition of a close contact as someone who has been dreadfully intimate with the close contacting process is 6 feet. Nobody disputes that. There is no organization that disputes that 6 feet is a close contact. So we have to identify people as close contacts when we're within 6 feet. We need to keep people 6 feet apart now so we don't have everybody absent. Right now, there are people out of the building all over the place, and we can barely keep it together with the staff that we have. If we're losing all of our staff because we're identifying them as being close contacts because they're all within 6 feet of kids all the time, we will not be able to run our buildings. We just don't have the bodies to do that right now. And as of now, we do not have agreements with the adults. I know people consistently are thinking about children. That's my job. I think about children all day and all night long. But I have to consider the adults in the building too. If we don't have the adults, we can't service the kids. Caroline?
I just wanted to say that I am not aware of studies that have literally concluded that 3 feet is just as safe. I think that there are many scientists and others that are saying they believe schools are safe relative to other venues and so on, that they're relatively safe. But I haven't seen actual studies that have compared school protocols where the distancing is set at 6 feet compared to schools that have been set at 3 feet. I think that it's not that they're just as safe. I think that there are lots of experts saying that they believe schools are safe even at 3 feet. But I haven't heard it stated in terms of just as safe. In fact, just logically speaking, it's difficult to imagine that it could literally be just as safe at 3 feet because you have double the number of people that will, as Dr. Cabral alluded to, will be identified as close contacts. And that means double the amount of risk when there is risk for everyone in the building. I just wanted to, now there may be experts that are claiming that, but having read just literally dozens of articles about the whole distancing issue, I have not seen a single one that literally stated it that way, that 3 feet is just as safe. Just wanted to mention that.
Okay, the next one is from Jennifer Troy, 200 Bay Road. You're spending your time and energy defending a hybrid program that is hurting both our teachers and children, instead of working towards getting our kids back in school. This is not acceptable when we know it is possible to do more. Many, many people have already enrolled their children in private school for the fall because they see you are not working towards change. How will that affect the town's funding? I would also like to know if the inequity in regards to some kids receiving 4 days versus 2 in-person days is legal. You're muted, Risha.
Thanks. We don't. We spend all day long working on getting kids back into school. I don't know how many times I can say that. I'm not defending anything. I'm explaining our current reality to answer questions that are very direct with a direct answer. These are the things we're looking at. These are the things we're working on. Is it legal? It has been touted by the Department of Education as a model program, and other districts are copying us. You can't just look at the number of days they're physically walking in the building. You have to look at the quality of the education. And we believe that the education that we have surpasses even, and I'm not going to tell you which districts ever, but superintendents have said, our kids are physically there more, but your kids are getting a lot more from your teachers. I don't know how else to explain that. If you really want to know what students are getting, you need to explore the program of those other districts and not how many hours they're walking into the building. It's not the same thing.
Kathleen Sheehan again, Harrison Avenue. Can you please speak to, she has 2 questions here. Can you please speak to why we are still deep cleaning on Wednesdays when fomites are not a primary source of transmission?
That has been our promise. Whether it's not a primary source or not, we are mitigating all sources that we can. It is not the only reason we have our Wednesday schedule. We've said that repeatedly. Actually, social emotional programming is the biggest reason, as well as the collaborative teaching, the collaborative planning for teachers and other staff. So as long as we're able to continue doing it, we are going to. We have children who are sneezing, coughing, drooling, licking tables. We're not talking about, you know, a restaurant table that adults are sitting at and getting up from that has a tablecloth on it or that gets wiped down. These need to be cleaned regularly.
Again, Kathleen Sheehan, Harrison Avenue. For Watertown school nurse, she indicated that they have had a very positive experience with pool testing. Why are we not engaging in pool testing?
Okay, I presume a lot of these questions came before or during the explanation of them, so the answers will be, I'll still answer them, but they'll be shorter, and if people need more detail, they can let us know, or they can just go back to earlier in this meeting. Watertown pays a lot per pupil more than Easton does. We don't have the money for it. We've been strapped for years in Easton. These districts you're talking about have had override upon override, and that's fine if we don't have it, but it shouldn't be a mystery why we can't provide the same thing that they're providing. Watertown has far more resources for their students than Easton does.
And also, we discussed this at a previous school committee meeting in length, that there's a lot of consequences to that, but also the number of staff that we would need, because right now we did initially put in to look at the 6-week trial, which would be DESE would provide us funding for that. However, for partial funding for the tests, and we would have to, it would take a lot of personnel to get it there. And in fact, today we had a call with the commissioner, and there was actual discussion about the difficulty that districts are having right now implementing it. Some of these smaller districts, and he's extending the window because they just can't get their acts together right now, because it is a much bigger process than they had initially shared with us. So so that's been a challenge, and they're trying to work with those districts to do that. And right now, we already know that we don't have enough of our nurses in the buildings. So the nurses would have to conduct the testing and do that. So
it's really important that when someone says they're doing something, it does not mean they're doing it successfully or that they haven't already abandoned it. That's information we are privy to. We know when a district has tried it and it has failed. We know when we call them to say, how can we do it? How did you do it? And they say, don't even start. Don't do it. We can't even afford to get the things that we've desperately needed because we've had to sink so much money into this program. This is we're getting first-person information from the people that are putting these things together. And when we say staff, it is our responsibility to provide somebody to go to every single student in the district and staff member, collect the samples, package the samples, mail the samples, get the testing back, find out what cohorts failed pool testing, make sure every single one of those individuals gets tested, get all the consent forms for every person in the district. And by the way, if you have a student or students in a class whose parents don't want them involved with pool testing, the pool testing is null and void.
I'm not muted, sorry.
It's useless. Because the pool comes back clear and you have a false sense that the class is clear, and now you've bunched everybody 3 feet or 2 feet or 4 feet apart, and you have kids that are it's not mandatory. It is illegal to mandate someone be involved with pool testing. You're gonna have statistically kids in every single room whose parents do not want them to be tested. And that negates the validity of saying that pool is quote unquote safe. We just don't have people to do this work and to follow this and to keep track of all of this and to contact people and to follow and follow up and to do the paperwork and to get the, it's, we don't have it. We've thoroughly vetted that. And we've thoroughly vetted that 4 times. It's not, we tried it with one company and we've abandoned pooled testing, or we've abandoned testing at all. We go back and we thoroughly investigate every single opportunity that comes up. And we haven't found something yet that works for Easton.
Caroline, did you have a question?
Actually, Leisha did answer it as she continued, so thank you.
The next is from Rachel Alterman, 32 Riverside Terrace. Thank you, Dr. Cabral, Mrs. Pruitt, school committee, teachers, nurses, and staff. We all want to thank you for your hard work in keeping everyone safe in our schools. We appreciate you. I'm asking my question on behalf of Easton CPAC, Special Education Parent Advisory Council. Multiple parents who have kids on IEPs have expressed a desire for their kids to return to school full-time. Kids who were deemed more at risk on IEPs have already been going full-time. Could you please comment on any considerations, plans for the lower risk kids on IEPs to return full-time? Thanks so much for all you do every single day.
Yes, we did not just identify the highest need students and then stop there. There are multiple professionals evaluating each individual student on a regular basis. And like I said earlier, it should, if a student is struggling and it has to do with the need for more in-person learning time and it is a manifestation of their special education need, the professionals are reaching out to those parents to make it happen. If not, and the parent reaches out to the school, please do, if you feel as though that has happened. But as I said before, there are many times when an attention issue or a plethora of other issues may be seen as a special education need by a parent, or the student has an IEP and they're seeing whatever mitigating factor is taking place as a manifestation of that special need. The professionals in the building who know that student best are created that IEP and work with the student regularly are able to assess that situation and determine if that's the case or not. If it isn't the case, like I said previously, that's not the end of the story. It is still the onus of responsibility on the staff and personnel if that student isn't going to be coming back 4 days or 5 days, that they provide the strategies, they provide the extra help, they provide the mental health resources, they provide the supports that that child needs to be successful. So yes, that is a constant consideration.
Kathleen Sheehan, again, Harrison Avenue, asks, what is the plan for fall 2021? And that is repeated a few times, so I won't be reading all of the questions that have that.
Okay. As of now, it's coming back to school as normal. But I don't control COVID. None of us does. If the governor shuts us down, he doesn't care that I want to go back full-time, regular. If we're in peril for some reason because of an outbreak or a strain or whatever /21 that comes along, I can't speak to that. But it is our full intention to be back in school in September in a regular schedule. But obviously we need more information. If that's the intention, we're going ahead with that idea. If data comes to us, recommendations or mandates, then we're going to be forced to adjust.
As we know, we just don't know what's going to happen, unfortunately. It's terrible.
I understand the desire to know. My job, when people ask, most children think my job is to determine snow days, basically. But when adults ask, what exactly does a superintendent do? I basically tell them, I solve problems for a living. I work and toil at problems until they're solved. To not have control over this, or to be able to provide the resources to just solve this in an instant is maddening. It's infuriating. It's helpless. It's all of the feelings that everyone who's asking questions has the same feelings. I'm a human navigating the same horrible situation as everyone else, and I don't have any more control over COVID than anyone else does.
Allison Daly, 32 Deverly Lane. I understand that Easton's phased approach to reopening was adequate in September. It is no longer adequate for the majority of our young learners. The research studies that you mentioned, specifically the evidence-based medical articles I've personally sent to the school committee, do not appear to be contradictory. I'm curious what piece of medical information you've received that you feel is contradictory.
There's a lot of medical information about different strains, about not having students in close proximity to adults. There are many studies. I think if it weren't contradictory, the CDC would have already come out and changed what contact tracing entailed. And like I said, I do not consider myself a medical expert, and I would not be bold enough to take information and synthesize it and change the recommendation of our health professionals. When the CDC changes what contact tracing requirements are, then we'll be much more freed, much more so. I cannot go against the CDC. I can't.
And we have been, at our meeting with the commissioner today, he did share that they are anticipating some new information from CDC coming out. He thought yesterday, but he's hopeful by tomorrow. And then if physical distance is not in there, that it would be coming out shortly after that. So just to share that, I can't wait for it to come out. I'm waiting. The next one is again from Kathy Sheehan, Harrison Avenue. Can parents access how EPS utilize the funds from the CARES Act?
I don't know if the government's going to be putting that out. I can tell you that we have spent it on technology, online programs, PPE, which means masks, gloves, shields, dividers wherever we have been allowed to put dividers,
Gowns from
PPE, disinfectants, nursing staff, cleaning staff. I think that's it, but I would imagine at some point the government will release all that information. Everything is completely audited by the government. It's very, very strict guidelines on what you're allowed to use it for. And we have to prove, obviously, that everything we spend is within the strict parameters of the government.
And when we say technology, it's not just the Chromebooks, it's not just the devices, but it's actually the infrastructure as well. We had to upgrade our infrastructure to obtain the service needed for all the devices.
Capacity for all those devices.
Plus, we have students that are home that don't have access to the internet, so we had to purchase hotspots to provide them that they are loaning. You know, they're on loan right now, so those are all additional costs as well. She also asked, Kathy Sheehan, Harrison Avenue, how does the Y program impact our available space?
It doesn't. It's not during the school day.
Right. If we had moved to later hours, well then the Y program would move to later hours as well.
Yep.
Okay. Miri Otero, 31 Rachel Circle. Why isn't a full day with alternating Wednesdays not an option for each cohort? Eating lunch in the classroom. We did discuss that. I apologize.
It's okay. Again, that is when we have our social emotional programming for all, and that is when our staff has their common time.
Okay, Erica Mandel, 50 Main Street. Can we get a list of what we can fundraise for to get these kids back? This is the first I've heard of this. Also, where can parents sign up to be subs? We want to help. Please let us.
Parents can sign up in central office to be subs, 50 Oliver Street. They can call the office. There's an application online, or they can come straight to the office and speak with David Twombly. What was the other part of the question? Sorry.
That'd be great if we can get more subs. How to a list of what they can fundraise for.
That's a little more difficult because if we have a list and everything's connected, so if we have a list and we only get some things on the list, then we have a bunch of things that we can't use because we didn't get everything on the list. So that would be very difficult. For example, if we got the furniture back, but we didn't have enough staff because we changed the schedule, then we have a lot of furniture sitting there when we already are going to be paying for furniture as part of a building project in a year. Do you know what I mean? So if we gave a list of things and people only bought certain things and we didn't get the totality, we wouldn't be able to do it, and we would have a lot of wasted money.
Katie Williams, 86 Lincoln Street. This is a question for the school committee. When the survey is sent out, and hypothetically most parents want their children in school full-time, or at the very least full days as elected officials, will you as a committee fight for our children to return, as these families were the ones that voted for you and thought you would be our voice?
I'll answer that, if that's all right with the rest of the committee. You can all jump in if I say the wrong thing.
You're our spokesperson.
Okay. I just want to say the school committee is, as Dr. Cabral has said, we want everybody back in school, full-time, lunches, gym, recess, classes, everything. We are fighting to do it, but it's hard to fight against a disease. COVID is ruling the day right now. COVID has us under their thumb. We're doing the best that we can. We work so well with Dr. Cabral and Mrs. Pruitt, our administrators, teachers, custodians, nurses, everybody, food service, paraprofessionals, everybody. I don't want to leave anyone out. I cannot say enough about the group of women that I work with here on this committee, and we are dedicated and devoted to your children and getting them the best education possible with the safety concerns of everybody. So I don't know if I said that correctly for everybody, but we are on your side, and your children are our priority. Anybody want to add to that? Thank you. Caroline?
Very nicely said. Just wanted to say very nicely said, Nancy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, continue on, Mrs. Pruitt.
Kathleen Sheehan, Harrison Avenue. How would the way EPS is currently identifying close contacts per the playbook differ if we actually followed the CDC definition? If we were identifying students 6 feet apart but seated in front of, next to, behind another student as close contacts, which is excessive per CDC definition, what would the impacts be if we reduced to 3 feet and followed CDC definition of a close contact?
So the CDC definition of a close contact is 6 feet, and if somebody has it in writing that it's 3 feet, they're more than welcome to send it to me.
Right, and when we're identifying what we mean is in front of, behind, because those are the 6 feet requirements, and side to side. But mathematically, right, with the Pythagorean theorem, diagonally, what'd you say, Alicia?
Pythagorean theorem.
Yeah, diagonally, they wouldn't, right, Nancy, right? Am I right? they wouldn't be able to, that's more than 6 feet. So that's why we just look right now to front and back and side to side. And if those are 6 feet, then theoretically they wouldn't be able to be diagonal.
And some people ask why, if they're at 6 feet, we count them as close contacts. That was at the guidance of our Easton Board of Health. We were told that because of the nature of children and students, the desks are precisely at 6 feet, but they're not fixed into the floor. And the professional guidance we received is that students will move around, they will lean, they'll push their chair up. By the end of the day, it moves even as many times as we push it back. And they said that it is conceivable that any one of those desks could be under 6 feet. And to keep people safe, the recommendation was before, in front of, behind, side to side.
And it is known that if we do go to 3 feet, that the contact tracing would double, right? So if
Unless they change it to 3 feet, which we are waiting for. It is not happening, but we are waiting for it. If it changes tomorrow, then we get to change what we're doing. If COVID goes away tomorrow, we get to change what we're doing. There are many things that we're waiting for that we do not have control over.
sorry, I'm just skipping over the anonymous and the ones with foul language. Oh, I wish people put their addresses and names. Okay, Katie Williams, 86 Lincoln Street. If we as parents apply to be a sub, would that help us move forward to getting back to school for more in-person learning?
It would be very helpful. And again, we've said that many times. Go to central office, 50 Oliver Street, call the office, ask for David Twombly.
Erica Mandel, 50 Main Street, has a point that she'd love to help by being a sub, but she can't when her child is at home. Sorry, there are so many, so I didn't have time to pre-read them. Natalie O'Reilly, 10 Throw Drive. Please explain how in the summer you claimed that it was very possible to easily pivot to the next phase, 3 feet distance or full days, as we needed, but it is completely not possible now.
It is possible now. It is still possible now. We are ready to pivot to 3 feet when 3 feet is acceptable for contact tracing. We are able to pivot. We have a plan. We are able to move. It has not moved to 3 feet for contact tracing and we do not control that. We do not determine that. I cannot change that for people.
Kathleen Sheehan, Harrison Avenue. If parents sign up to substitute, can we set up a schedule, like certain parents sub on certain days? One thing that is preventing me from signing up is that I work full-time and would need to have a set schedule. It wouldn't be an issue if I wasn't needed on a scheduled day. However, it would help to be able to adjust my work schedule.
Substitutes are often needed the day of. We may find out in the middle of the night or first thing in the morning that someone's not in. So a person can decide on a day-to-day basis if they want to accept a subbing position. So that is not a problem. If somebody wants to be a substitute, they are not committed to working every day. In fact, there's an online system where they go in and put in who they want to sub for and what day they want to sub. If you're working on a particular day, you wouldn't put in for that day.
Maria, 5 Wedgwood Drive. Oh, it doesn't have a last name. Okay, sorry. Allison Daly, 32 Deborah Lee Lane. The comments made by Caroline that she knows what most parents want based on her perception of social media is precisely why a survey is needed. It is very difficult to feel heard, and many do not speak up due to fear or intimidation about speaking out during these live meetings where names and addresses are required. the survey is right and just.
Again, if the survey is to determine that parents want their students back in school, I don't understand why we need a survey. We know parents want their kids back in school, and we want kids back in school. I'm not sure what we would be learning from a survey of that nature. And again, I have to consider staff as well as parents. So even if parents say we want our kids on top of each other, I need to have professionals in those rooms who are okay with being that close with that many kids all day long. And they don't have the vaccine yet. And I've expressed my frustration about the vaccine before. We've done everything I can. And if I can just make a comment that is not an answer to this question. If people can see the amount of time we're taking to answer these questions right now, this is what is taking up a bulk of our day. And I'm not saying I don't want to answer questions, but I have not provided any information this evening that has not been written or spoken about or answered or on video many, many other times. When I'm being asked, what am I working on all day? A lot of it is answering people's questions, is being called every name in the book that a middle school bully from my past would never think of calling us. It's trying to share plans and resources and put copies to links in emails for people who have gotten that in their emails many times before. I think we're being really clear about the things that we need here. And I don't know that anybody's doing that. We're looking for substitutes. If you can't substitute, we understand that. Please pass the word along. We're looking for advocacy from our legislators. Help us get the vaccines so our people can be safe and we can be in school with children. Support our educators so they're not breaking down and we don't have to provide half of our ancillary services to keep their spirits up and to keep them going in an outrageously difficult way of providing education for students. To constantly have to defend staff and justify why they're doing what they're doing is counterproductive to our efforts. And if people wish to continue, that's fine, but please understand that that is where our effort is going to be diverted, is going to be to trying to answer those questions and direct people to the same information repeatedly, instead of really funneling our energy on what we've been trying to do. Now, I can see some of these questions. There are more F-bombs in here than in The Catcher in the Rye. And I don't understand how that's productive. We're asking for your help. We're on the same team. We want the same thing. We've been in education for 35 years because all we want to do is serve kids. Please help us accomplish that goal. Contact your legislators, write letters of outrage to the governor. Help facilitate clinics for people to get vaccines. Boost up the morale of the staff who are doing everything they can for your kids in the most outrageous circumstances without enough money, resources, or people to come and help them. Even tonight, there are 76 comments, and I've counted, they're from 25 people. I'm not saying only 25 people want our kids to go back to school, but I don't know how much 3,500 families and 600 staff members and tens of thousands of taxpayers want us to divert the same effort to the same things that don't solve our problems day after day. And I'm sure if people think that I'm wrong about that, they will let me know tomorrow. But there's only so much we can do, and there's only so much we have control over. And I regret that as much as any parent in this district.
Caroline?
I just want to say that I think most folks have no idea how many hours our superintendent and assistant superintendent put in. I know that we get emails in the middle of the night, we get emails on Sundays, updates, etc. Lists of the incredible number of things that both of them, that Mrs. Pruitt and Dr. Cabral are addressing on a daily basis. I have never worked with a superintendent who was more invested in the success of children, more invested in ensuring that both their academic and social and emotional needs are met, more invested in equity. And I think that, I understand that people are terribly frustrated and that their lives are upended, and that there's this notion if they can just get their kids back in school full time, somehow all of this awfulness that everyone's facing is just going to go away. But it's just not that simple. As I've said, we can't just flip a switch and start having full in-person schooling. It's just too complicated, and it's too high risk. And if I gave the impression that I think all parents or most parents don't want their kids back full in person, I apologize. I just know that there are many, and I do look at social media posts, and I certainly get impressions, but I feel like parents are split on this issue, and that we have to respect those who feel their children would not be safe, fully safe, in a hybrid model, that would not feel safe in other than a hybrid model. And as Dr. Cabral mentioned, having children be fully remote is virtually impossible at this point. So I really plead with people not to allow your anger and your frustration to take over your behavior in relation to the people who really, truly care about your children and want. I have not been doing this for 27 years because I don't want the best for children. I can't explain to you how invested I am in your children's well-being. We may disagree on how we go about providing the best experience with all of the challenges and obstacles we face, but I assure you, everyone I work with on the school committee, and Dr. Cabral and Mrs. Pruitt and our educators care deeply about your children and so want them to be back to normal, to a normal educational experience. So I just, again, want to tell people you have no idea how much investment your superintendent and assistant superintendent have made in your children over the past year or so. I mean, it was always a tremendous investment, but it has been so far above and beyond, I wouldn't know how to describe it at this point. So I really urge you to tamp down that anger, to understand that everyone is frustrated and anxious and wants the best for their own children and for yours.
Thanks, Caroline. At this time, unless there is a different question in the question box that we haven't already talked about, I'm going to move on.
Yeah, just one question about vaccinations. That if everyone will be, so Jennifer Antibai from 5 Judith Road. Tough question to ask at this point, but once the vaccine is available to everyone over 18, will everyone entering the schools be required to have been vaccinated?
We cannot mandate that.
Right.
We are not allowed to mandate that. That was asked of the commissioner today. We are not allowed to mandate that at this time. However, I will say that we have prepared our staff and the town is prepared to provide the vaccines as soon as they are given to the town. And we have almost 95% of our staff that have expressed interest in getting the vaccine voluntarily. There's a comment from Allison Daly, 32 Deborah Lee Lane. Dr. Cabral, I find your comment about, quote, if parents want their children on top of each other, end quote, very offensive. I would like a survey for EPS families and staff. I would not imagine a survey to families without including educators in that survey. This attitude toward EPS families that you display is unintelligible word, and is exactly why families feel intimidated by asking questions. I don't want anybody to feel intimidated. I have answered every question that I have been given, and I will continue to do so. I am just reminding people or asking people to consider where they want our attention directed at this time. That's it. I don't know. I certainly didn't mean on top of each other to be offensive. I don't know why it would be. I was being hyperbolic. I meant regardless of the distance, there are other factors to consider. So I apologize if that is offensive, but that certainly wasn't my intention. I am going to continue answering questions as I have. I have neglected nothing that has come to me, and I will continue to do that.
There's two final, if that's okay.
Sure.
Katie Williams, 86 Lincoln Street. First, I want to reiterate how appreciative I am of my children's teachers. They have been nothing short of amazing. I appreciate all that everyone is doing. I will be signing up to sub tomorrow. However, basically, it's the same 25 people complaining. It's unfair. We want to be part of the solution. We want to help move things in the right direction. And then lastly, Danelle Eaton, 7 Kilseth Road. Thank you, Dr. Cabral and Mrs. Pruitt. You are two of the most incredibly hardworking women I know. I am so incredibly embarrassed for our community that you're being treated so incredibly disrespectful. On behalf of fellow parents, I wish to apologize for your treatment. Everyone needs to know that there is no conspiracy theory here. Dr. Cabral, Mrs. Pruitt, and the school committee are doing everything in their power to get the children of our community back to school. As both a mom and a teacher in Easton, I have been hit from all aspects of this. The best thing we can do as a community is to stick together, support one another, and be positive. Please choose your words wisely when addressing our administrators.
All right, well, thank you everybody for your questions. We do appreciate getting them and your emails. And, just we got to take this road together. And thanks, Dr. Cabral and Mrs. Pruitt. All right, so Dr. Cabral, superintendent notes.
The only note I have is that we are looking again at our district calendar. It was brought to our attention that our first day for kindergartners in 21-22 is scheduled to be on a religious holiday. And so we're looking to reschedule that. The problem we're having is that if we move the dates back to after the religious observation, at the end of the school year, losing those days, those are the days that we use for kindergarten screening. We're going to try to work on a workaround, but I just wanted people to know that we're working on it, but we just need to figure out how we can conduct the kindergarten screening that we typically do at the end of the school year. I'm sorry, there's a repeated question here about teachers getting vaccines, if we can get back to school. I did answer that, Sir Stephen Delamere. I have answered that multiple times. Yes, that's what if you know somebody who can get us vaccines, please help us. We want to get back into the buildings, and that will help us to do it. And I've seen 3 times you've said we haven't answered, and I'm not sure if maybe I'm misunderstanding your question, but if I am, please email me tomorrow, and I'll be happy to address it in a different way.
Oh, all set then? Oh, okay. Assistant superintendent notes.
We just have 3 things I just wanted to inform you about. we've started our process to find the new Oliver Ames High School principal. We had 31 applicants for the position, and the committee sorted through the applications and chose 10 candidates to interview in round 1. We started those interviews this week and will continue the interviews the week after vacation. After round 1 of the interviews, the committee will narrow down the pool of applicants, and those that we chose will move on to round 2 of interviews, where we will get more in depth with the candidates. After the second round of interviews, we'll conduct site visits and then have the candidates visit Oliver Ames. Whether those visits are in person or virtual is still to be determined due to the virus. Final interviews will then be conducted by Dr. Cabral, and the goal is to have the new principal of Oliver Ames named by April 9th. Are there any questions about that process or what's been going on so far? I don't know, Jen is the school committee representative. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yes, thank you. I get my only, just a couple of additions there are, one, it's been, I'm glad that I was selected to participate in the committee. It's been a wonderful learning experience. It's also been a bright spot in a very difficult time to be, reviewing. We attracted some really wonderful candidates, and it's been a pleasure to read through their experiences and to be able to meet some of them so far. It's just been a really positive experience, and thank you to Mrs. Pruitt and the central office staff for all of the work in coordinating this entire effort. It's massive. There are so many documents, so many meetings, and so much time that are going into this extremely important task. So as a member of the search committee, you've made it very easy, well organized, and I thank you for the efforts. I know that your time is limited, and the staff as well, and they're doing a great job. So thank you for that.
And it really is a wonderful committee. It's a great group of professionals and parents, and our student representative is fantastic. I think we all want to adopt him. He's wonderful. I also wanted to just let you know about the structured learning time report. As Dr. Cabral mentioned, the structured learning time earlier, the first gathering of the data was collected in November, and actually tomorrow we'll be submitting the second round of data. As you know, we've exceeded the time requirement, so you won't see much change. However, I just wanted to alert you to this because it will be made, once the data is all gathered from every district, it will be made public again, and then I'm anticipating another dashboard being set up. And then lastly, I just wanted to update you on our diversity and inclusion work within the district. And we do continue to work on diversity, inclusion. Our curriculum leaders are working with our consultant, Teresa Moore, on ensuring that our units of study are more inclusive. We have been meeting monthly with Teresa and will continue that work. We are also looking at more professional development opportunities for staff. We had a wonderful professional development day where we heard from a panel of former students and parents regarding their experience as being a person of color in Easton. And the next step from there is, so how do we do this work? How do we as teachers help all of our students, regardless of race or gender identity or special education needs? How do we ensure that we're meeting the needs of all students through all of the instruction that we're providing? So Teresa Moore is working on that with us, and she's doing a fantastic job, and our curriculum leaders are just absorbing everything. But also to let our staff know and all families know that we are continuing that professional development for our staff. Those offerings will be coming out soon. And that's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Mrs. Pruitt. Okay, school committee notes, Caroline.
Sorry, I think I've spoken enough today.
Okay. Michelle.
I do not have anything.
Okay. Jackie.
No, thank you, not tonight.
Okay, thank you. Jen.
I don't have anything further. Just hope the staff and students and families enjoy the vacation break coming up safely. And I think we're all looking forward to a little time off. So it'll be hopefully a little bit of rest and restoration. operation for everybody.
Safe is the key word, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple things. I just sent it to you, the committee members today, the D block law class, mental health days. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but it looks very interesting. I guess it's a class at the high school, and they made a whole, like a law thing, so, keep you posted on that. One of the questions new school update, anything, no do we have contractors, do we have anything going on there?
We are continuing the process. We do not have a contractor named yet. That is coming up very soon, actually. Ground is breaking as soon as the ground thaws. Even though we don't have the contractor yet, it's scheduled as soon as the ground thaws, April, March, perhaps May. So it's very quick once the contractor is chosen. We will announce that, of course, as soon as it happens. There are a lot of design elements that are coming together, and if anybody's been part of such a project, you know that there are now some 3D representations that are being created and some drawings, and so we have talked about and do want to have some community opportunities for people to get a better idea. It's one thing to see a sketch like the one that's on the floor behind me, sort of a 1D drawing. It's another to see actual photographs of what things are going to look like. And so we are trying to put together a series of opportunities for people to see that. And I do want to say that we did have students at the high school that I've talked about before who recent graduates or students currently there who worked with our design team, and the design team recently came back with some prototypes based on the recommendations of the students, and now I'm just trying to create a meeting between the two so they can share it with the students, and I really can't wait for them to see, honestly, the fruits of their labor manifested in a way that is very unique and rare for high school students. So we're extremely, extremely thankful to the folks and the professionals over at Perkins Eastman, our architectural firm, who literally had graphic designers from around the country working virtually with our students so that they could create this space, this engaging space for our youngest learners. So we'll be sharing that information as well.
Thank you. Just one question. So I know, Chrissy, when that snow was supposed to come, and I think you made the right call, keeping everybody in school. But I know we had that great snow day in December. Are we in a process that we would have a remote day? I know we always talk about power outage and this and that, but it seems like the last couple of storms, we've kind of dodged that bullet. Will we have remote learning days if there is snow?
Remote learning is tricky because Easton is notorious for power outages. So even if students are home, if a critical mass of students or staff do not have power, it's going to be difficult to conduct any kind of classes. And the same is true of employees that live outside of Easton. So Easton may not even be so terribly hit, but they wouldn't have their teachers teaching because they don't have power. It is also a point of bargaining. So we need to have an MOU with our units in order to have remote learning because it is a change of working conditions. We don't have that yet.
Well, because right now the last day is June 17th, so I don't want it to be a 2015 winter again. That was awful.
Well, we don't control that either.
I know. Another thing that we have no control over. Okay.
Can I just be on record? Nancy,
can
I just be on record to say, I do love snow days.
No.
They're my favorite thing. So I wish that we could have called them.
When it gets to June 29th, nobody likes snow days. So that's all I'm saying. Okay. Our next meeting is February 25th. And at this point, we are going to go into executive session. And I'm going to make a motion to head into executive session to discuss strategies with respect for collective bargaining with units A and B, and doing so in public meeting would be detrimental to the school committee's bargaining, what do I want to say?
Position.
Thank you. Good. I'm getting old. Position. So we're gonna vote to go into executive session and not to return. Do I have a second?
Durant, second.
Okay, all those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. We'll see you on the 25th.